I'm running on something of a roll here, so let's keep going. This is the fourth of the intros. This is going to be all the kind of special rules lumped together. And sure, royal weddings are sort of a special rule for Spain, so that could have been lumped in. Okay. But here we come to where the major powers have their own rules. And I'm going to try to go over these as quickly as I can without reading every detail of each rule, because that's not going to stick. Okay. Nasrid's lost control of the Strait of Gibraltar shortly before the game. There were several attempts to recover it. Leaders and military units from Castile and the Nasrid are able to fight in the Gibraltar space even if those two powers are not at war. Note that Aragon and North African Alliance are not able to enter Gibraltar under this, although Ferdinand may. While not at war, the Muslim player may enter Gibraltar from Sohail. Castile may enter from Jerez. Okay. Jerez is not owned by Castile at this point, so. And either may enter as part of a naval transport. However, until these powers are at war, Castilians may not enter Nasrid home spaces, nor may Nasrid enter spaces other than Gibraltar that are home for Castile. Furthermore, as long as Castile and the Nasrids, yeah, I'm reading everything, am I not? Are not at war, it's not necessary to comply with the requirement concerning naval units for an assault on Gibraltar. Such an assault can be carried out regardless of a navy. Feels a little weird, but okay. If you conquer Gibraltar before the mandatory event Muley Hussein seizes Zahara, the Muslim gets the following permanent benefits. 2 victory points, a +1 card marker to the Gibraltar box on the player card. Muslim now have a +1 modifier to die rolls on Terra Incognita. And the Muslim player gets a 5th settlement marker if they haven't gotten it from something else. These 4 benefits are not received if Gibraltar comes under control due to the event. While the Muslim player controls Gibraltar, the connection from Tangier to Gibraltar and the one from Ceuta to Gibraltar in those south to north directions only are treated as normal connections for all purposes. Right now, they are passes. This facilitates North African support. Reconquest of the Nasrid Kingdom. The war against Granada, the last Muslim stronghold, represented the culmination of the Reconquista. If the Nasrid Kingdom and Spain may only go to war through play of the mandatory Muley Hassan card, this state of war is permanent for the rest of the game, unless any Muslim power conquers Rome before the event has been played. Wait. If any Muslim power conquers Rome before the mandatory event has been played, it triggers the play of the mandatory event, draw it from the deck, and execute it. If it's in the player's hand, the player gets another card. That's going to be a standard procedure whenever a mandatory event gets pulled out. A bunch of examples for something that's coming up, but the Muslim and Spanish can earn victory points for the Reconquista. If Granada is under Muslim control, they have a +1 Granada marker on their card. Just there. And victory determination of turns 5, 6, and 7. If the Nasrid Kingdom has surrendered, if this objective has not been achieved, the Spanish player loses a victory point from his accumulated total by getting Nasrid resistance markers. When the Nasrid Kingdom surrenders, the Spanish player gets 1 victory point for end of the Reconquista, and they get that marker. When the Nasrid surrenders, the Muslim player receives victory points based on the home spaces of Castile and or Aragon. Or Oregon, what the hell if he has that, that he currently controls. As the Reconquista progresses, Nasrid non-key home spaces can lose their home property for the Nasrids because the Moorish population is actually just an overlay of lords, of the nobility of the area. This is something you see in empires of the Middle Ages as well. So, if there's no control marker on a Nasrid home space, it's under Nasrid control and is still a Nasrid home space. If there's these special markers with the Arabic on them, the control of the space has been gained from Spain during this action phase, and the space will lose its home property unless control is taken before the end of the current action phase. If there's a normal Spanish control marker, control was gained in a previous turn and the territory is no longer a Nasrid home space, sort of. If there's a Nasrid control marker, it's lost its home property and therefore had a normal Spanish control marker on it, but it's been recaptured by the Nasrids. This explicit placement shows that while it's under Nasrid control, it's not a home space. And finally, if there's a control marker from any other major power, if it's recaptured by the Nasrid, it returns as though it's a no-control space. Here are the status changes that happen. If Spain gains control of a space during an action phase, you put the special marker there if no control marker was present. However, if a Nasrid control marker was present, you add a normal Spanish control marker to show that it is not Nasrid home space. If the Nasrid gain control of a space with a special control marker, they get their control marker in place instead to indicate it's not a Nasrid home space. If another power takes it, they just get their control marker, and if the Nasrid get it before the Spaniards get it, it switches over. I don't know what happens if the Spanish take it from another power. I think it's just a normal Spanish control marker, but weird shit could happen where you're actually helping the Spaniards get control more quickly that way. In the winter phase, all Nasrid home spaces with special Spanish control markers are switched to normal ones to show that they lost the home property. During the winter phase, there might be a Morisco uprising, and if there are markers or Morisco regulars under Nasrid control, they can regain the home status on areas that have lost it. And if the Nasrid kingdom surrenders, all home spaces which are neither marked with a Morisco uprising nor have a Morisco regular are marked with normal Spanish control markers. The special markers are no longer used in the game. Furthermore, from this moment on, those Nasrid non-key home spaces are considered Castilian home spaces. So there is an effective surrender for one country at least. The Morisco uprising. There's an event that comes out that causes a special revolt, resulting in the placement of 2 Morisco regulars in Spanish-controlled Nasrid home spaces. The Morisco uprising rules apply to any Morisco regulars on the map that have been played by event card, which could be city-state rebels as well, or because of the surrender of the Nasrid kingdom. Yeah, I'm having to read all of this. This part at least is important throughout the game, right? It's what Spain's trying to do right from the beginning. Maybe not the first thing they have to do. They have to deal with the revolts in Castile and Aragon, or Oregon, the Greater Idaho movement. Morisco regular and militia are limited by the number of units provided in the force pool. They say Morisco on it. They're not the archers that are unknown. If the Nasrid power has not surrendered, the Morisco regulars on the map are considered Nasrid for all purposes, including having the ability to restore home property for Nasrid spaces that had lost it. Which is weird, because that doesn't appear in here. If the Nasrids control a space, let's see, winter. Yeah, see, there's nothing that happens in the winter that converts them back to Nasrid home spaces. So something's fucked up here. Follow the steps below to resolve the event Morisco uprising when the card is played, or if the surrender of the Nasrid Kingdom has triggered a Morisco uprising. Draw caravan resources from the pool, putting back resources as necessary until you've drawn at least one, that awards CP. Place 2 Morisco regulars of value 1. There's only 2 in the force pool, in 1 or 2 unoccupied Nasrid home spaces controlled by Spain. The Nasrid power gains control of these spaces by placing a Nasrid control space marker. Remember, if either of them is a key, it will directly obtain its status as a home space, as these spaces never lose it. There's 2 keys, aren't there? Malaga's a key? Yeah. Okay. Place or move from another space up to 2 Morisco uprising markers. There's only 2 of these. On unoccupied non-key Nasrid spaces controlled by Spain. The Nasrid power gains control of each of these spaces by placing a Nasrid control marker. Spaces with a Morisco uprising marker act as if they are in unrest for all powers except the Nasrid. These markers can be removed by the Spanish player only by using the rules for removing unrest. The following restrictions apply to the Morisco at all times. And yeah, I mean, there's something weird here, including the ability to restore the home property to Nasrid spaces that had lost it. The only space, there are no spaces that have lost their control thing. There's no rules here that explain a way that regulars can get back home spaces. There are none. There's a way to take the spaces that are the special control markers and convert them to ownership and still control. That's the only thing I see, and I don't know what the fuck they're talking about, to tell you the truth. And what do I got here? Alhambra. Okay, that's got its own rules. Okay. Morisco regulars can never be built by spending CPs. Morisco units, regulars, and militia can only move, control spaces, and assault into original Nasrid home spaces, regardless of who controls them. In winter, Moriscos remain in place and never return home, except if they're part of a besieging formation. In such a case, they are moved to the nearest fortified space they control, or non-fortified if they do not control any. If the Nasrid power has surrendered, and I guess this is just a special rule that allows them to survive in non-fortified spaces. If the Nasrid power has surrendered, use of Morisco units is further limited. Each turn, the Muslim player can only use CPs from a single resource, never a card, to recruit Morisco militias, recruit the Nasrid Corsair, move Morisco units, and or use such units to control spaces, assault, initiate piracy, etc. Once the Muslim player has used a resource to act with the Morisco, place the Morisco activated marker in the space of the Muslim player card to remind them they can't do that again this turn. If the Morisco militia or Nasrid Corsair are recruited, they must be added to a Nasrid-controlled home key or Nasrid non-key space with no control marker, which probably doesn't exist if they've surrendered so far. Bobadil can command Morisco regulars and recruited Morisco militias, but never in the same formation as North Africans, although they can share formation with Nasrid units exiled with Bobadil during the surrender. Assaults by who the fuck knows what this is all about? I don't know. Assaults by Morisco units can be made during this impulse on the spaces that were not under siege at the start of the impulse. Assaults by Moriscos can be made during that. Ah, yes. Because you normally can only move into a space, put it under siege, and you can't assault it. The Moriscos have special rules because they can only use one resource worth of CPs. This is all under the surrender. Let's look at the winter effects, which may tell us how we regain home territories. If in the winter phase a Morisco regular is present in a Nasrid non-key home space marked with a Nasrid control marker, the space automatically recovers the Nasrid home space status, and you add 2 Morisco militia units to the space, if available. If in the winter phase any Morisco uprising remain on the map, roll a die for them. On a 4, 5, or 6, you remove the uprising and the Nasrid control marker. The space is again home. Add a Morisco militia. If the roll is 1, 2, or 3, the Morisco uprising remains in the space, doesn't change the control. Okay, so that's a way things can become home spaces again, but there's nothing based on the Morisco units. Let's keep going. Finally, if the Nasrid kingdom has surrendered but there are Moriscos on the map, the Muslim player draws a caravan resource from the pool, putting back resources as necessary until they've drawn one that awards CP. So they get their CP, they get activity for the next turn on a counter. I see nothing that allows you to reconquer home spaces, except if another power takes the space and then the Moriscos take it back. Okay. Surrender uses apparently regular major power surrender. The North Africa, okay, that's one country. What do we have? 7 more to go. The North African Alliance, Fez and the Berbers. The North African player has 2 sultanates. On turn 4, a North African regular is placed in Tlemcen. Sounds like it's one of these units, not one of the archers. A militia is placed in Iran and 1 militia in Bahia. Again, it can't be the archers because they don't have that. Place in the North African force pool a 2-value infantry unit and a naval squadron. Okay. I think I should be removing those from the force pool then? Well, that's a 6. What the hell? Because otherwise, they're already in the force pool. I don't remember that being in the setup. The Muslim player gains 3 victory points. 1 for Constantine plus 2 for Tlemcen. There's Tlemcen. Where the fuck's Constantine? There we go, triangle. Okay. And Tlemcen has a regular thing, has a special home key. Constantine, you just use a regular marker, a victory point marker, which you don't have to use. In fact, you shouldn't use. Add a square control marker for the North African key. Starting on turn 4, North African units can be built in home spaces of either of the 2 sultanates on map. You will notice that each kingdom has a slightly different shade. This is just to indicate who comes in. Ottomans. The North African power may receive Ottoman regulars as reinforcements from a bunch of events. Ottoman Siege of Otranto, Algiers Regency, and Ottoman Venetian War. I think the sword ones are the Ottoman Venetian War. They have the same color as North Africans, but a different silhouette. There we go. If these units are eliminated, they cannot be recruited again. If the Ottomans take Otranto, a North African formation whose size is determined by a single leader, can render that. So they are the special counters. 3 of them have swords on them that apply to one particular event, the Venetian War. The others apparently just don't. And really, they should say Ottoman on them. The Algiers Regency. This space comes into play with the other Berber spaces at the beginning of turn 4. Notice it's gray, though. It does so as a special independent space, hence its gray color. No power can control this space while it's independent. When the mandatory event Algiers Regency is played, it becomes a Berber space. Displace any non-North African units from Algiers. Add 4 Ottoman regulars to Algiers. Add the Barbarossa naval leader. Remove Kamal Reyes. And add 3 Corsairs to the space. Okay. Assuming you have them. The Muslim player gains 2 victory points for Algiers. Add the square control marker. Now complete the Algiers Regency event. This mandatory event must occur in the winter of turn 5 if it hasn't happened. Quetta and Strait Control. Quetta is over here. This important control point guarding the Strait of Gibraltar is a Portuguese home space. The Sultanate of Fez begins the game at war with Portugal, but not the Nasrid Kingdom. Whenever Quetta is controlled by one of the Muslim powers, the Muslim gains a +1 card marker. Their Nous get a +1 die roll modifier for Terra Incognita on 1, 2, 3, A, and B. Okay. But not the New World. They get a 5th Muslim settlement counter into their force pool if they haven't already done so. Quenna's benefits are not cumulative with those of Gibraltar, but they are a second chance to obtain them if capture of Gibraltar was unsuccessful before Muli Hassan. Unlike when Gibraltar triggers these events, the first 2 abilities listed in the section only apply while Quetta is controlled, but they do get that 5th settlement. Saharan trade caravans. The Muslims control trade routes that brought stuff. At the beginning of each turn, the Muslim player places a randomly chosen caravan in each trade box, Marrakesh, Fez. If it's turn 4 or later, they get Tlemcen. In the winter, these resources may reach the Muslim player's hand. Tunis, Anfa, and Rome, target cities of the Muslim. If the Algiers Regency has, I don't know why I pronounce it that way right now, had been played and the Muslim controls the independent city of Tunis, that city grants an additional victory point for the Muslim. Okay. Sure. Do we have a Tunis? Yeah, we have a Tunis victory point marker to remind us of that. And I've got it on the board. The port city of Anfa, the most important port on the African Atlantic coast, grants 1 victory point for control by the Muslims. I do not have a marker there. Already captured it. Okay. Both Muslim powers are perpetually at war with the minor power, the Papacy. If the Muslim player gains control of Rome for the first time, give them a 5 victory point marker. If such a conquest of Rome occurs, all Christian major powers enter into a state of perpetual war against the Muslims. See the Papacy's special roles. Behaia and Oran in the Cisneros Regency. With the arrival of Cardinal Cisneros, the fortified spaces of Behaia, it's got to be up here. Oh, there's Behaia. And Oran is here, and they've got the crosses. Become controlled by the Spanish. If the Muslim player gains military control of either of these 2 after this time, they gain a victory point for each space as long as it's controlled. Okay. North African key. If 2 or more North African home keys are not controlled by the Muslim in the card draw phase, subtract 1 from the Muslim ruler's charisma, putting a -1 card. Each North African home key gives the Muslims 2 victory points for its control. All of the keys are necessary for an automatic victory. I think I can't win an automatic victory until those 2 come on board, but I don't think I get the -1 card. I don't know. Otherwise, the Muslims only need to get 4 keys to get an automatic victory at the early stage of the game. Of course, they're probably on the defensive. They're probably not going to gain more keys. We got Quetta would be a key. That would be 1 I could gain. Conceivably, I could gain something down here, like Naples, maybe. I don't know. If I'm doing really well. Like, I think it's really unlikely to get 4 more keys early in the game. So maybe it's fine to just say that these just don't count until the Algiers. Like, those don't, I'm not penalized for not having them, is what I'm saying. But they're 2 different things. One is this, which I don't get until turn 4, and this, which I don't get until an event plays. Can I win the game before that? I really don't know. Like, can I win with an automatic? All right. That is the end of the Muslim player. Not too bad. Only 14 more pages of rules to go. We need to swap batteries. Portugal has 2-3 pages of special rules, somewhere around there, 2.5. Let's call it. School of Sagra is Henry the Navigator. This gives them victory points and allows them some more exploration capability and an extra nous and whatnot. If 2 or more Portuguese home keys are not controlled by Portugal in card draw, they lose a charisma. Meaning they can't hold as many cards until they regain control again. How am I going to remember this? Yeah, I don't know. It's listed here, but, you know, I know they're trying to do the best they can, and that there's player aids and whatnot that I can print out and the like. But like with all the information that was available, you know, just sitting out there for EU Pop, you give me a lot of game state and a lot of busyness and stuff, and it's just not going to work for me. Okay, there's a reason that the super heavy Euros don't work for me. It's the same kind of thing. There's just too much information overload being present in the stuff in the game. Is there too much? Why is there not too much information overload in EU? Again, while there's a lot of special rules in that game, they generally are slice by slice in little bits during the game. There's not a lot that's just constantly there. A little bit, a fair amount, maybe as much as this game, but it's a huge game comparatively. And it's also not spread all over in little text on player aids and stuff. You know, it's more intuitive though. It's just more intuitive. It's not like you get a -1 card thingy or something like that. It's like, well, you have the option to change religion, you know, and that's a big deal. All right. Each main Portuguese home city gives victory points. They need all of them to have automatic. North African Atlantic port control. If they control ANFA, they get 2 victory points instead of the 1 that the Muslims get. Each time a mandatory event, Portugal Master of the Atlantic is played, Portugal gets victory points based on the number of African spaces controlled from Tangier, Asila, Magaza, Anfa, Agar, Saleh, Safe. I'm guessing it's the ports running up to Tangier. If at any point during the game Portugal controls all of these ports for the first time, they get 3 victory points for supremacy of the Atlantic coast of Africa. However, these 3 victory points are lost if Portugal and the North African Alliance sign peace at any time after those points were gained. So I think those are permanent points that you get unless you sign a peace. Beltranejos, there's, well, this whole another section is the rules on Beltranejos, which it's also the Portuguese player. Their units and home card. They're under control of the Portuguese. They're always allied until the Peace of Alcacovas. The Portuguese also get the use of the Beltranejos home card, which is this one, I believe. As long as this limited major power is not surrendered. The Peace of Alcacovas, this puts an end between the confrontation between Portugal and Castile. But Beltranejos will continue to fight on. The peace can be activated in the game by a card or by a diplomatic agreement between Portugal and Castile in the diplomacy phase. This is kind of a weird thing of turn 3 or later. It's kind of a weird thing because, honestly, Portugal maintaining the war doesn't necessarily help them. It hurts the Spanish. So again, you've got to make this decision of, do you just want the peace so that, like, you can pursue your own goals and stop having to worry about it? This peace is the only way Spain and Portugal can end the war at the start of the game, that they're in at the start of the game. If later in the game they're in a new war, peace deals are made as normal. The signing of the peace has the following effects. Portugal and Beltranejos are no longer allies, although they're still controlled by the Portuguese, who can play combat and response cards on behalf of either power. Yeah, you can't play combat cards, but you can always play response cards, so I don't know. I think. Immediately displace all Portuguese units in Beltranejos spaces and vice versa. The normal state of war between Portugal and Spain ends. Pieces lasts at least for the remainder of the turn in which it's signed and one additional turn. During this time, Portugal and Spain may not go to war. Put Alcacovas in forced turn 1 marker in the box of its diplomatic status, flip it, and then it goes away to indicate your obligation to maintain the war has expired. All right, war at sea marker. A war at sea exists between Portugal and Spain. Place this marker on the alliance and war table. Their naval squadrons intercept each other normally, and either power may initiate piracy against the other. This war at sea expires when the obligation to keep the peace has expired. Spain and Portugal may not ally as long as the state of war exists at sea. Castile can no longer establish settlements in ocean zones 1 and 2, although they can navigate into them in order to explore and pirate. As a reminder, put a Spain no settlements Alcacovas marker. Portugal can no longer land in spaces in the Canary Islands. Any spaces it controls there come under Spanish control immediately, displacing any Portuguese there. Put a Portugal no Canaries. Portugal gets 3 victory points for agreeing to stop the war. Kind of seems like they're giving in. Like they shouldn't get points for this, right? The Spanish player selects a card from his hand and gives it immediately to the Portugal as war reparations. If the Spanish player has no cards left, Portugal draws one from the deck. A marriage between Isabella and Alfonso of Portugal is immediately arranged and is automatically successful, assuming both these royals are still alive. If either of them died previously, this wedding opportunity is lost and it can't be celebrated with anyone else. If Spain or Portugal controls some of the other powers' home spaces, it returns them to their opponent. Displacing any units there except as those of the new controller, calculate the number of fortifications, strategic spaces, and keys of the opponent that each player returns. The difference is awarded as bonus VP markers to the player who returns more spaces. So it behooves you to, pursue the war as the Portuguese and gain spaces on Castile, but it may not be to your advantage to take the best victory point option as you can. If the Peace of Alcacovas was signed by diplomatic agreement, remove the card from the deck. If somebody has it in the hand, it gets replaced. Beltranejos. The Beltranejos units change after the peace. If they're on the map, they can only undertake move, recruit, and assault actions when the home card for Beltranejos is played as an event, and this home card can no longer be used as CPs. It can, however, be played to support the headline event. This home card play may be extended with resources, and those extra CPs can also be dedicated to the Beltranejos. From this point on, the Beltranejos may perform the assault action directly on arriving at a fortified space, i.e., we're in these special rules where, like, if you can only take one action with a power, you're able to do assaults, like right away as soon as you siege something. Which is kind of saying, hey, the rules that the game has are maybe right, maybe wrong. Like, I don't remember how long these turns are. There's 7 turns in 46 years. So 6 years a turn, 5-6 years a turn is sort of the minimum there. You're telling me I have to move into a space and be there for 5 or 6 years before I can siege it? That feels bullshit to me. Oh, no, same impulse. No. Okay, so yeah. I can kind of buy it. It still feels like it's about a year, but whatever. Because winter only comes every 6 years in this game. Again, the abstractions that are present in this are so much so that it feels like all this fucking detail is so wrong, right? Like, I don't know. Anyway. Oh, where are we? If the impulse is extended with a resource, the player who controls the Beltranejos may repeat an assault action on a single space if of those he's assaulted by playing his home card. Remember, you can only like assault once per impulse or something like that. I don't know. I don't remember it, but I'm assuming that now that I'm reading it. The home card can now be played in addition to the other 2 Portuguese home cards. Ah, yes, you can play all 3 home cards, is what they're saying, on one turn. Normally, you can only play 2 home cards in a turn. Then the third one gets discarded. That will not be the case. The Peace of Alcasovas is considered broken if Portugal and Spain go to war at any time after the mandatory peace has expired. If this occurs and the Treaty of Tordesillas has not been played, remove the Treaty of Tordesillas from the deck. If the Peace of Alcasovas is broken, Spain and Portugal no longer have any limitation on where they can found settlements and whether or not they can enter the Canary Islands. Treaty of Tordesillas. If the Peace of Alcasovas has not been broken, the Treaty of Tordesillas can be established, remaining in force as long as Portugal and Spain do not go to war. The treaty is triggered only by the play of a mandatory event card. The signing of the treaty has the following immediate effects. The Beltranejos surrender. The cost of a DOW between Spain and Portugal is raised to 6 CP. I think it was raised to 4 by this other Alcasovas. I don't remember seeing that. I don't remember seeing that here. But I think it's raised to 4. The cost of piracy between these players is raised to 3, only applicable to Naus, as they're not actually at war. The war at sea is over if it was active. Portugal gains a 2 victory point marker. Portugal may not establish settlements in zones 7 and 8. Spain may not establish settlements in zone 4, 5, and 6. However, if you slip somebody into Brazil, you get to keep it, and likewise the Spaniards on the African coast. Yeah. But zones 1 and 2 were already penalized by Alcasovas. These words just, they don't stick in my head, these names. I'm not familiar with them. The prohibitions established in the Peace of Alcasovas against founding Spanish settlements in Ocean Zone 1 and 2 and against Portuguese entry into the Canaries are maintained. Change the markers from the Peace of Alcasovas to those indicated for the Treaty of Tordesillas. Portugal and Spain can still go to war after this time, breaking the treaty. Once broken, Spain and Portugal no longer have any limitations on where they can found settlements and whether or not they can use the Canaries. The cost of piracy returns to 2 CP and the cost of declaration of war to 4. Okay, so here we have that 4. Now, I thought declare war is not here. I think it costs 2 normally. Oh no, it costs based on this. Who's at war here? I don't know what this is. This is supposed to be somewhere. I don't know where this is. I think it's the Nasrid and the Aragon, but I have to look it up in the thing. It got bumped. Okay. Yeah, but no, there shouldn't be at war. Fuck. Oh. Yeah, I don't know where this is supposed to be. I'll put it here. We'll have to find it. Yeah, so the normal cost between Portugal and Aragon and Castile is 4 or 6. Okay. All right, so there is no There is no two. But they start at war. That's what it is. Okay. Resistance of the Beltranejos event. This event can happen only if the Beltranejos is surrendered. When it's played, the Beltranejos reappear and gain control of Tui and Sanabria, presumably are areas. There's Tui and Sanabria. Displacing other powers. You add a regular in Tui, you add a regular in Sanabria. You create an additional key that awards victory points to Portugal in Tui. Indicate this with a square control mark. Control of this space gains Portugal a victory point as long as Beltranejos maintain control. As soon as Tui is controlled by another power, remove the square control marker and the space just becomes a simple space again. Portugal receives a victory point bonus marker for the event to place on their player card. Weep, weep, weep. If this event has been played, Beltranejos units in the map may only expend CP for actions from a single resource that's played to extend a single Portuguese impulse. These moves must follow the rules described for Beltranejos under the Peace of Alcasovas. They are additionally limited to only recruiting units in Tui and Sanabria if they control them. Portugal may continue to play combat and response cards on behalf of them. Once the Portuguese has used a resource to act with them, they get a marker on their player card to say they can't do it again that turn. Foreign support for the Beltranejos. The cause of Joanna had political and military support, at least in theory, of Portugal and France, since both were interested in weakening the Union of Castile and Aragon. Louis and Alfonso signed an alliance to help the Beltranejos and invade Castile, intending to join their armies in Burgos. If at the end of a French impulse, a Portuguese stack with a leader and a French stack with a leader, or without a leader but at least 3 units, meet in Burgos or Vitoria. Burgos, Vitoria. Both players gain 2 victory points for the Beltranejos cause. This award can only be granted once and never after the Peace of Alcasovas has occurred. To obtain this benefit, the Peace of Alcasovas cannot be signed in France and Portugal. Must be allies, yes. And then they have their surrender rules, which appear to be in the normal rules. We'll stop at Castile here, because I have to pee, and I should probably take a break. Again, though, my voice is holding out. Like, it's been not comfortable. I don't speak other than on the videos, so it gets unused to it, and it gives out on me too quickly. But yeah, I mean, you can see how fucking weird this is, right? Like, I should probably have the Beltranejos support markers in that space so that I remember that I want to go there. So there's one, and that's up here between these two. You know, I need these mnemonic devices to have any chance of remembering everything. But that's, you know, like the control markers, I need to have those there just to see what happens. That's a pretty major goal that Spain and Portugal, or France and Portugal, are going to try to achieve. Because 2 victory points each is a pretty good deal. Hurting Castile is not bad. The question, of course, is why are they getting that? I don't know. You know, it's goals that you have that you want to make, but like they don't really help your country advance. These kind of things, when I see them in EU, I usually end up skipping them because you end up spending effort doing these things that, like, yeah, sure, it was part of the foreign policy or whatever goals, but man, it's wasted resources. It doesn't build your engine. So there are a lot of those in the early periods of EU that I'm just like, oh man, these are horrible. Now, some of them look like they're horrible, and then, you know, by knowledge of having played the game, I found, wow, you kind of have to do them. So, for example, the Turks really want to take Rhodes within the first period of the game if they can manage it. It's usually very hard to do, though, and if they don't do it, they're going to get penalized for a goal in the next period as well. They get penalized for it in the period they're in. They get penalized for it in the next period, and then they also later on have a goal that is only possible to do if they've taken Rhodes. So it's like, yeah, there's just shit in that game that if you don't know about, what the specific goals are and whatnot, you're going to play poorly. And I fear that this game is filled with stuff like that. All right, let me pause. I had that confusion over who the Grand Captain was, and it's Cordoba. Yeah, I have a game, El Gran Capitan, I just picked up. Within the last year or whatever. And it's in my pile of, I really need to get these done. I've done all but 2 of them now. That one and, this doesn't count. I don't know where to put that. And No Peace Without Honor, the Dutch War. Those 2 have to get done, and then everything is ready to be put away. Now, I don't know, but I kind of am excited about playing that because I'm always so impressed by Cordoba in EU. He's just so fucking amazing. I don't know if he's as deserving. I am reading the history of him represented in here, and I don't know, he's not a Marlboro, let's put it that way, right? But he's got ratings that are almost as good, and he's just like the best leader in Europe, in EU. I think he's even better than the Turkish leaders. Anyway, just wanted to note that because on my way downstairs I noted this, and I'm like, well, okay, after I pee, I'm going to go deal with that. As I'm reading the history and whatnot, excuse me, it comes to mind how, and this is what drove me back up here, and I'm going to do the Spaniards while I'm here. They're pretty short. Might be able to do. The French are relatively long, so I don't know. But how absolutely unlikely the inheritance of Charles V really is. So, I mean, basically, I'm trying to think of a situation like the Castilian heir is married off to the Portuguese. Let me look at this. John of Asturias is, the eldest son, so he should be inheriting all of Spain, right? But he dies early. The eldest daughter dies in childbirth. Her son, who is not Manuel, is not even represented here, ends up dying at age 2, and so the accumulation of Habsburg and Spanish territories being, put together is incredibly difficult. And then the Hungarian inheritance was also, that's Hungary and Bohemia crowns, is also really, really dependent on a lot of situations, and Mohawks and all that. Falling. And it's just so weird how that all falls together. And in a sense, you kind of can't represent the era without sort of pre-programming this stuff. And in this game, it's, basically scripted by the ages, the may die and must die events and whatnot. I'm sure pretty much force it. It's not that important in this game in the same way. But when you look at like EU, which starts out towards the end of the period this game covers. When does this end? 1516. So it's the end of the first era of EU. But that just completely scripts it, right? Because you wouldn't have the Europe of of a great Habsburg Empire that's external, that has significant external powers beyond what the Holy Roman Empire has. And then you wouldn't have the familial connection between the Spanish and Austrian Habsburgs that was maintained to make sure that there was an alliance there. It's so weird to think about, and I'm trying to think, I know the EU computer game has stretched back, as did EU Pop, starting in like 1450 or so, prior to the fall of Constantinople for the computer game. I know that there's a possibility you could like keep the Byzantines alive, and there's like scenarios for that and whatnot. But it makes like the historical events really, really hard to happen if they're not scripted in, and I think they are in the computer game. I don't know. I haven't played the EU2 of the computer game had a really, really rich like historical scripting in it. I'm not sure the later ones do. I know that they've gotten weaker. Anyway, let's get to, I guess, where we are, which is Castile. All right. Isabel dies, the crown of Castile split, undertaking the following activities from the event, which is required by turn 5. The Nasrid home spaces are considered Castilian home spaces for the purposes of this rule if the Nasrids have surrendered. Well, yeah. Units in Ferdinand's stack may be displaced. Flip the Fernando counter to its red reverse side only, Crown of Aragon. If the stack is not in a Castilian home space, start by displacing all Castilian units to the nearest controlled Castilian home space. Then displace the Castilians out of Aragon. Between the play of Isabel dies and the mandatory event Cardinal Cisneros as regent, which will be required in the winter of turn 6, land units of Castile and Aragon cannot be part of the same formation except in Italy, Sicily, and under the command of the great captain. I don't know if, so that's a weird and. If they are in Italy or Sicily and under, I think that requires that the great captain be in charge of them and they be in Italy or Sicily. Yeah. Ferdinand can only command Aragonese, because remember he was able to command combined forces just as the captain was. Castilian units may only be moved to a space in Italy if moving as part of the event Crown of Aragon. Additional effects occur if you are between these two events during the card draw phase of turn 6. After receiving his hand, the Spanish chooses 3 of them and shows them to the French, who decides which one to keep for his use and returns the other 2 to the Spanish. Okay, weird. Aragon and Castile are still considered allied for all other purposes. Cardinal Cisneros Regency. When this card is played, he'll be placed as the new and final ruler of Spain, and all restrictions imposed by Isabel's death are canceled. Spain gains control of North African ports. Spain and North African alliance go to war. It's permanent for the rest of the game. All non-Spanish units are displaced from those, and they get the orders in there. Spain gets a victory point as long as they maintain, for each of those two forts, as long as they maintain them. But there was like a wooden fort that was transported. Just weird shit going on. Additionally, Spain gets an extra victory point, which he keeps as long as he keeps both Badis and Melilla. Where those are? Okay, I have no idea where those are. There's Melilla. There's Batis. Okay. Those are not the port he gets for these ports. Okay. If the Muslim player gains control of Oran or Bahia with Cardinal Cisneros as the ruler, he receives a victory point for each, which he keeps as long as he controls them. In the winter phase of each of the and I think that's these, which kind of aren't really on the map right now. They shouldn't be on the map right now because he can't receive them now, but he also can't receive them until this card, I guess. Although I thought maybe there was something that gave him points for him. I don't know. If the Muslim player gains control, in the winter phase for each of the following spaces with, in the winter phase for each of the following spaces with military orders unit, Batis, Melilla, Oran, Bahia, and Algiers, the Spanish player rolls a die, and for each hit of 5 or 6 reduces the Muslim's piracy mark. La Mesta. The Catholic monarchs granted privileges to the sheep owners. Each turn in the winter phase, the Spanish player will roll on a Mesta trade table to see if resources are received. Using the modifiers, if a foreign war with Brittany is active, they get 2 dice. During the action phase, if at the end of a Spanish player's impulse, Castile is supporting with at least 2 militias, the foreign war in Brittany can get an extra roll. Yeah, I thought you rolled... Oh no, it's placed as detailed in 8.2. Yeah, it moves around. Aragon, 1 crown for several kingdoms. The kings of Aragon had under their command different kingdoms with their own institutions. Each kingdom may provide a card to the crown of Aragon and therefore to the hand of the Spanish player, but receipt of that card is variable since the courts were not always sensitive. The Spanish player always gets the Aragonese home card and 1 card for the kingdom of Aragon itself, i.e. 2 cards on turn 1. Oh, no. I don't think that's i.e. I think that is they get 2 cards for the kingdom of Aragon on turn 1. Now, if we look at Aragon, Charisma... See 20.6. So Isabel gives 4 cards. Aragon gives these cards. So 2 additional cards on turn 1. Receipt of additional cards is dependent on 3 factors. Whether or not this is an odd or even number turn and control of specific spaces, thereby making a roll of a die. So you always get a card from Aragon. Great. No matter what. But Aragon gets 2 on turn 1. Spaces with a shield of the crown of Aragon. Like that. Okay, so Valencia on every turn on a 4 through 6 gives you a card. Catalonia on every turn, Barcelona on every turn on a 3 to 6 gives you a card. But Mallorca and Sardinia only happen on odd number turns on their die roll. Sicily and and Roussillon only on even turns give you a card on a certain die roll. So your hand size for Spain is going to be weird. But you do get a fair amount of cards. So you've got 4 from Isabel. And it looks to me like 1, 2, you're going to get 3 or 4 more from Aragon. And we look at Portugal, and they're getting like 5 cards, right? 4 cards here, 3 cards plus consolidation. France can become quite powerful, I think, as well. Dynastic rights on Naples and Roussillon. Aragon gets special victory points for maintaining control of these 2. After the mandatory event of the death of Ferrante, whenever Spain controls Naples space and at least 2 of Gaeta, Cerignola, and Gagliano. These 3, I guess. Right? Or was it Atella? They gain a victory point. Additionally, whenever Spain controls both spaces in Roussillon, they get a victory point. And that'll be Perpignan and Serres. Okay. There's a reason I said these are the special rules, right? All right, France, consolidating the power of the monarch. The French monarchy is very, very weak at the beginning of the game. They're coming out of the 100 Years' War. It's not even over yet. There's 6 great noble houses, Anjou, Alençon, Orléans, Bourbon, Armagnac, and Foix-Navarre, which can each provide a card if they're loyal enough to the French ruler. Each noble house has a row on the map. These up here. With a track of 6 squares filled with values ranging from 0 to 5. And there's another one here. Is this Navarre? Yeah, Foix-Navarre is a little different. Okay. Okay. The French player can spend 1 CP on Consolidate Power to gain a level of loyalty with one of these houses. The number in each box represents the maximum number that the French player can roll on a single die during the card draw phase in order to gain a card from that house. So if you're on the 0 space, you can't roll a 0, so you get nothing. But if you're on, like the 2 space, if you roll a 2 or less, you get a card. French player earns 1 victory point the first time he reaches loyalty level 5 for each row of the table. The loyalty levels can be lowered afterwards, but you don't lose the victory points. The House of Foix-Navarre measures loyalty differently. If France gains political control of Pamplona through assault, the house is considered level 3. If France allies with Navarre by diplomacy, Foix-Navarre is considered to be level 5 for purposes of that die roll. Like, I'm going to remember any of this. For a house to be eligible to grant a card, France must control the most significant space related to that family. The most significant space for Alençon is beyond the game map. It's always going to grant a roll. And those spaces are Armagnac, Orléans, Anjou, Bourbon, whatever. Okay. And those will have the shield of the noble house. It looks like Perpignan has 2 shields, but I think one of those is a Spanish shield. Yeah, that's the Aragonese shield, to indicate that they get points for controlling Navarre, or Roussillon, not Navarre. Finally, in the card phase, if they control Perpignan and Roussillon, they may receive an extra card. If France has fewer than 3 houses at level 5, receipt of that card is automatic. If 3 or more houses are loyal, which diminishes the importance of Roussillon, the French rolls a die and receives an extra card on a 1 or 2. The House of Foix-Navarre is never considered for the purposes of counting loyal houses for receipt of this card for Perpignan. We got to swap batteries. I don't get everything here. I actually feel like this is going to be a little less unpleasant than Virgin Queen was. I don't know why. It felt like there were so many damn things you could spend points on. Maybe I got to give that game another try. But it just felt like there was a lot of weird shit going on. Yeah, there's a lot here too, so I don't know. But the specific spaces and everything, it all feels more grounded to me in some ways. Anyway, dynastic rights on Naples and Roussillon. France gets special victory points for having political control. After Ferrante of Naples is played, whenever France controls Naples and at least 2 of the 3 strategic spaces that we discussed before, for Aragon, they get a victory point. Additionally, whenever France controls both spaces in Roussillon, they gain a victory point. Same thing as Spain, but the Aragonese are basically in conflict with France over the rights to these. Rivalry with Maximilian of Austria, the Holy Roman Emperor and ruler of Burgundy after marrying Mary, daughter of Charles the Bold, was a sworn enemy of the French. The mandatory event, Emperor Maximilian of Austria, triggers challenges for France to represent this rivalry. Execute the event in the order set forth, undertaking all 5 steps. First, relief for besieged Milan or Metz. If one or both of these spaces of Milan or Metz are besieged by France when the event is played, Maximilian arrives with a relief force of 8 independent units in each besieged city. I don't know how Maximilian can be in both, but if Maximilian was in a foreign war, remove him from that war. At least he can't be in that as well. If both are besieged, the player playing the event decides the order of execution. A relief force, so what I don't know is if the 8 troops go to one place and then they go to the other, and thus losses count, or if Maximilian shows up in one and then the other each time with a stack of 8 units. It's worded in a way that I think it's a separate stack of 8 in each case. Let's see. If both are besieged, the player playing the event decides the order of execution. A relief force field battle immediately takes place where the units inside those cities join in the attack with Maximilian's reinforcements. If Maximilian relief is forced to retreat, they're eliminated. If there's a tie in the number of hits, retreat up to 4 independent units into the city. The rest are removed from the map. However, if they win and break the siege, all surviving units of the liberated city and Maximilian's relief force remain in the city space as a defensive army for future attacks. In either case, remove Maximilian from the map after the combat. He's immediately available for the next use on the other besieged city or for the reconquest listed. Then he reconquers Milan or Metz. If at least one of these cities is controlled by France, Maximilian sends an attack formation composed of 8 independent units and the leader Maximilian to one and only one of them chosen by the player executing the event. The combat's resolved for 1 round of field battle or assault. Make an immediate assault if there are 4 or fewer French units and they take refuge inside, i.e. not the normal, fuck, my battery is being, it's being too annoying. I gotta stop. This 1 round of attack by Maximilian's units is repeated at the beginning of each new impulse of the player who played the Maximilian event until either Maximilian or the defender no longer have units in the space, even if the player chose to pass during the impulse. If Maximilian's formations suffer a retreat result in field battle or no longer maintains enough units for siege, remove his entire formation. If the city is controlled by Maximilian's units, he leaves as a garrison all the independent units and removes his leadership. Then we hit reinforce Milan or Metz. If Milan or Metz is not besieged, but still independent and have fewer units than their initial starting garrison, add independent regulars to the space until they regain their initial deployment level. That's something I'm going to have to look up on the rules because Milan has it looks like 8 there, but Metz only has 4. And note, those are spaces that are important to France. But I don't know when they get those counters. Reinforce foreign wars. If a foreign war event is active for France, reinforce the defenders by adding 5 independent regulars to France's rival. If Maximilian is not already present besieging Milan or Metz, add his leader to the active foreign war. If both foreign wars are active for France, place Maximilian in the war against Burgundy. Event played. Finally, play of this event raises the cost for France to enact the Treaty of Senlis, as described in France Turns Towards Italy section. Place the Maximilian played marker in the Treaty of Senlis on the French power card. Okay. And does that tell me anything I need to do? Wow, I got shit moving where it shouldn't. Fuck. Foreign wars, -1 card. I don't see a Senlis. What am I looking for? What am I looking for? Okay, the Treaty of Senlis. I don't see one on here. Oh, there it is. Gotcha. Okay. All right. What does that matter? I don't know. During the winter phase, France rolls on both the French Mediterranean and North Sea trade tables. This is a separate roll. We've talked about the keys involved in this. France turns towards Italy. France may, without restriction, declare war on the Papacy or Naples. Historically, they did declare war on the Papacy to get down there. However, for France to declare war on Genoa, Florence, or Venice in the declaration of war phase, it must have all 3 of the following treaties signed. Place the markers on the French player card when signing each one. Oh, boy. Okay. So we don't put them yet. Okay. In addition, once the 3 international treaties are signed, the French player gets a 2 victory point marker, use Consolidate Power, for turning to Italy that is retained as long as these 3 conditions are fulfilled. You have to control Milan, 1 of Nice or Modena, and 1 of Florence, Venice, or Genoa. The Treaty of Etaples with England. This treaty is signed when the mandatory event Treaty of Etaples is played. It provides these benefits. France moves units in the garrison box against England, which is over there. To Paris. The squadron and naval leader Casanova are then placed in controlled home port of their choice, bordering any sea zone. Diral modifiers from North Sea trade improvements are now applied. The Treaty of Senlis with Maximilian. There is no card that represents this treaty, but France may unilaterally sign it by extending the impulse in the action phase or announcing it in the diplomacy phase of a turn. Signing the treaty is only possible on turn 3 or later, and only if France is not in a foreign war with Burgundy or Brittany. If the Emperor Maximilian of Austria has been played at least once, indicated by the counter in the Treaty of Senlis, announcing the treaty has a cost of either discarding a random resource or choosing a specific card and discarding it. If the French player does not have the resources or card, he cannot sign the treaty. So it sounds like you just have to extend the impulse on turn 3 or later, unless Maximilian is played, and then you have an additional. And extending the impulse, I don't think it costs you that extension. I think you get to do your stuff with it. You just have to extend the impulse. Not clear. On the turn the treaty is signed, the Emperor Maximilian of Austria event may not be executed. Such an event would only be used for CP if played by any player. From now on, Maximilian will no longer intervene over the city of Metz. If Maximilian is on the map besieging Milan or Metz, he is removed from the map along with his besieging army. It sounds like he will intervene over Milan, though. Interesting. The Treaty of Barcelona with the Catholic monarchs. This treaty cannot be signed if it's turn 1 or if the death of Ferrante of Naples has been played. It can be signed in any of these three ways. It may be signed by extending the impulse in an action phase or announcing it in the diplomacy phase of a turn. In these cases, France must cede control of all spaces under French control in Roussillon to Aragon, displacing any non-Spanish units there. This act immediately puts the Spanish player and the French player at peace if they're at war. If any player plays the Treaty of Barcelona event, that'll trigger it. During the French player's spring deployment, the French player can give the Spanish player either 2 cards chosen by the French player from his hand or one of his resources chosen at random and 1 card the French player chooses from his hand. In this case, the current war state is left unaltered, but the treaty is considered signed. Okay. It's weird. I don't know. Like, it looks really cheap. You can extend an impulse and still do stuff. As far as I'm reading it, like, you just extend an impulse and it allows you to do it. Now, I don't know. But that gives up stuff. And, like, trying to balance what all the decision making is on this, oh, man, I got no fucking clue. Like, this is where it kills me. This is where I'm feeling as lost as I did with Virgin Queen. I got to deal with my battery. Hopefully my crankies come back when I start realizing, oh shit, there's more stuff that I'm just not going to be able to remember and not going to be able to plan for and whatnot. It's just too complex. Okay, where are we? If this treaty was signed by A or B, either the card or extending the impulse, but not the spring deployment handing cards and resources without affecting the peace, If France or Spain still controls some other power's home spaces, it returns them to its opponent. Calculate the number of fortifications, strategic spaces, and keys handed back. The difference is awarded as Barcelona victory point markers to the player who returns more spaces. If this treaty was signed, remove the Treaty of Barcelona card from the game. If a player has it in their hand, they have to get a new card. Also remove the card if the event Death of Ferrante of Naples has been played. The Monarch of France, Lord of Italy. France receives victory points for controlling spaces in the victory determination phase. Naples, Rome, Ravenna, Milan, Genoa, Venice, Florence, and Otranto. There's no markers there for that. When France has at least 5 of these spaces controlled, it gains one of these awards as follows. 5 out of 8, 1, 6, 2. Control them all, you get 3 victory points, but from then on 2. So this is an accumulation of points. You don't have to hold it for the game to get those points. These victory points are in addition to those granted by control of those spaces. Some of those spaces are squares, so yeah. Metz and Milan. Control of the ecclesiastical city of Metz gains the French player a bonus victory point. Maximilian can aid this until Senlis is signed. Control of Milan grants the French 1 victory point. Maximilian can aid this city at any time. Okay. So therefore, their counters do belong on the map to remind me I want to take them. Paris and French keys. The Paris space is off map. Its control is exclusive to the French, unconquerable by other powers, so France can never surrender and always build units. Otherwise, it has the same characteristics as a French home key, but can never receive plague or unrest. Each French home key gives the French 2 victory points for its control. Is Paris one of them? Paris is not one of those. As indicated on the player card, French control of all of them is necessary for automatic victory. Foreign support for the Beltranejos. That's the counters we placed over there to remind us. Letter of marque. Guillaume de Casanova-Colon became an admiral in the French Navy. The French leader Casanova has a piracy factor of 1, and his presence in a fleet of French naval squadrons allows those to carry out piracy as if they were corsairs. They can be carried out against powers which they're not at war with. And we are going to stop and not do Catalonia yet, even though it's sort of France, because we've got the foreign wars, which are also France. I think, I don't know, it may be it may include other foreign wars as well, but this is a good place to stop. I'm fatigued and irritated by knowing there's something that I don't remember. It's already gone from my mind. It's absolutely vital. Yeah, so like I can do this Treaty of Barcelona starting on turn 2, but it's like, what's going to fucking remind me of that shit? I mean, I could take these treaty markers. I mean, I'm just trying to make things make sense to me. So Treaty of Etaples is only done via a card or mandatory on turn 3, but that's fine. Treaty of Senlis is possible on turn 3 or later. I'm going to put that here to remind me. I don't know if there's anything that's going to help tell me that. Treaty of Barcelona can't be signed on turn 1, so I'll put that on turn 2. But, you know, it's like this. I need these to remind me to look up this rule, right? This is the first thing where I feel like, yeah, there's something that is going to cause issues. But I got to tell you, the truth of the matter is, turn 4 is where these show up. So I'm going to put them there to kind of remind me of that. That's the, not Fez, but the other North Africans, the Barbary pirates, whatever, I think show up there. I just have no assurance that there's anything in the game that's going to tell me to do these things on those turns, right? If I don't put some kind of marker down. Anyway, we're done for now. It is Christmas Eve, which was always the big holiday night in my family. Of course, it is very, very early in the morning. Not all that early, honestly. Probably around 5 in the morning on Christmas Eve, and we weren't up at this hour. We would be up at this hour on Christmas, but that was a matter of, again, Christmas Eve was the big party, so, we didn't usually make it till dawn, but probably till 5, yeah. Lots of champagne, lots of treats, all wonderful. And it's when we would open the presents, a lot of them. Christmas Day was kind of a letdown. It was all about eating and everything. All right. What am I thinking? I'm thinking I ought to get these off of here, because they're not really there yet. I want to remember their existence by keeping them kind of over there. Oh, I don't know where that is, but I didn't bring the scenario book up. The scenario. So I read through the historical, narrative of the time, and a lot of it blurred. It's kind of interesting because it throws the major pieces of art and death of important artists and whatnot to give some context. The political and the military, it's all part of what the game is about, but it's kind of neat to see that. It doesn't mean anything to me, but some people are going to be able to link better to the artwork and realize that. It does bring, of course, in a lot of ways, the Catholic Church of this era and its excesses and whatever are a big part of what, caused the great wealth of art of the Renaissance in a lot of ways. That kind of money would simply not have been available without what some would call corruption, whatever. I don't know what I'd call it. But yeah, and then one other note that I had, that I remembered, the naval battle I was thinking of is Lepanto. And again, the only major power involved in that on the Catholic side in this game would be Spain anyway. So like Venice and whatnot could be added, the Papacy. I don't know. I know Venice and Spain were heavily involved. I don't know, and the Papacy, but I don't know if any other, I'm sure some minors were included in it. But you wouldn't have a major power involved in that. You would in EU, though. So, however you want to take that. It just does feel weird that you can't, you can use loaned navies, so yeah, there's a way around it. Now that's a battle that comes from a later period, more in the Here I Stand era, mid-16th century, if I recall correctly. But it's just what came to mind when I was discussing that. And I guess we start doing this. We're on Catalonia, which is the French secondary major power. Anjou and the Generalitat. Catalonia, under the power of the Generalitat, starts the game in a civil war against the King of Aragon. At the start of the game, the war has already reached its last phase, where, with the support of France, the Anjou have established as a monarchy in the principality to help maintain the struggle. Catalan units are under the control of the French. They're always allied. The French get the Catalan home card as long as... Where did it go? As long as this limited major power has not surrendered. Until the surrender of the Catalonians, no French leader other than Anjou can enter the Catalan home spaces. French formations without a leader may always enter such spaces, though. Anjou may command both French and Catalan units. The leader has both colors. I guess that's the white. I don't know. Oh, see, most French have like a blue up on top. He kind of doesn't have as much of that, like a bluish gray. It's really subtle, I gotta tell you. It definitely does not bring to light that he's a special French leader, but whatever. Despite being allied, French units may gain control of unfortified spaces with Catalan control markers, exchanging the existing Catalan marker for a French one. This action is performed with the usual 1 CP. The presence of Catalan units nearby does not prevent it. This is kind of weird. I don't know what a Catalan control marker is. Does it include... So there are Catalan spaces like this that do not need a control marker. I don't know. Anyway. I assume the French can grab those because it's really unlikely that, I don't know, there's parts of Aragon they might grab, so I don't know. Or at least I think so. Barcelona. If in the victory determination phase, Barcelona is under the control of the Spanish, the Catalan faction surrenders to the King of Aragon and ceases to exist in the game. Well, that's pretty fucking ugly. Barcelona's over here. The hell is this? See, this has white on the bottom, so I think it's Catalan, but it's not. It's Aragon. Yeah. If on the other hand, Barcelona is controlled by Catalonia during this phase, the French get a victory point for controlling the key at the end of the turn, and that's the pile that I have there. Split home spaces. Many spaces near Barcelona are split with two colors, gold for Catalan and red for Aragon. Yeah, so I see something that you might call red. The Catalan color is either white or silver. This is gold. That's the Beltranejos, I guess. They're Castilian, so, you know, the Catalans wouldn't be involved in that. I don't know. But anyway, when Catalan controls them, no marker needs to be placed on the space. When Spain controls them, a Spanish control marker is placed on it. If a mixed formation of Catalan and French gains control, place your choice, French or Catalan, as desired. A formation containing only Catalans gaining control must place a Catalan control marker. One with only French may place a French one. Well, Catalan control markers aren't necessary in those, so I don't know. I guess if they gain non-Catalan spaces. Once the Principality of Catalonia is surrendered, it does not return to play, and these split home spaces are considered Aragonese home spaces for the rest of the game. But they are not at the beginning. And then we go to the rules there. Foreign war cards. Oh boy. Yeah, and this is the major powers section of the special rules. Then we get into the minor powers section. And that'll get us another 7 pages or so. And then we get to the victory. I didn't go into victory in the main part of the rules because I'm just following the order here, but I don't know. I guess you could skip to the end if you want to know how you win. You win by collecting victory points or getting an automatic victory, just as a hint. All right, foreign war cards. There are 3 cards, Tribal, Burgundy, and Brittany, which force Portugal or France to divert land units and or army leaders off map to resolve a foreign conflict. Spain, Venice, Muslims can also be affected in a similar fashion by the Ottoman-Venetian War. Then why didn't you conclude that and use all 3 powers? What the hell? When those events are played, place the event card on the map. On the map, really. Where? I mean, there's not a lot of space that's like open. Place the specified number of independent units to represent the opponent in question on the foreign war card. In the case of tribal insurrection, place native insurgent units. There's a pile of units that are marked tribal. nicely, they put a name on them, unlike, say, the Ottomans or whatever those archers are, which they don't. For combat purposes, these units are considered to be militia. Even though they don't look like it, they have full color pictures just to piss you off. And remember to place a minimum of 4 such tribal units, even if Portugal has fewer than 4 settlements. Okay, I'm assuming the card tells me something like that. The French or Portuguese player then selects a number of units designated on the card from any location on the map, except a space under siege, garrison against England, or another foreign war, and moves them onto the card. Units may be chosen from multiple stacks in different spaces. If you don't have enough, the first units to be recruited must be added to the foreign war to meet these requirements. In the Ottoman-Venetian War, units are added to the conflict directly from various power force pools of unbuilt units. I think those are the sword units, which actually aren't part of the force pool, but whatever. Army leaders may be selected from any location on the board, even under siege, and placed on the card. If you select multiple leaders, use only the one with the highest battle rating for an effect. To resolve the conflict, French or Portuguese must spend 1 CP on the fight foreign war action for each resolution attempt. Okay. This is not on there. It's in the orange there. And it looks to me like everybody has that action. So, I don't know. Yeah. And yeah, well, you got notes here, like these actions, if carried out with home cards, are limited to units of their specified power. This is an important little note, the thing that I would forget otherwise. But again, it's tiny little text on here. It's going to be hard for me to remember to look for that. My concentration is not that good when faced with that. And that's why I say these player aids that maybe give a lot more information, they're just going to add to that overload of little bits of information all over the place. It's the best you can do. It's just that I feel like the core design decisions were what caused this game to be problematic for me. Or will cause it to. We shall see. Always keep hope. All right, a field battle then occurs between all units of the major power and all independent units on the card. The battle is resolved as a field battle on the map, except there is no defender to receive extra dice and there's no retreat. If all independent units are eliminated, the foreign war is over. The use of combat or response cards is allowed. When the foreign war is over, all remaining units of the major power are placed back in Paris, if this is the French, or in a home key for the Portuguese. Okay, what about the Spaniards? They get one of these. What about the Muslim? I think like they have the ability to trigger that. Portuguese units may not return if they do not have a home key. In this case, keep the units on the foreign war card until they gain some. If the French or Portuguese defeat the enemy in a foreign war, that power receives the war winner VP. Place the proper bonus marker on the card. And every time you place victory point markers, it affects the track. If all independent units are not eliminated, the major power at war will have to pay for another fight war in a future impulse. The French or Portuguese player receives 1 less card if they're fighting a foreign war. There's a -1 card marker as a reminder. I'm betting you this is not all on the card. Will I remember to go read this rule again? Maybe, maybe not. Each one is special, so, well, 2 of them are special, so I don't know. Major powers can construct new land units directly onto a foreign war that they're fighting. They can also add leaders to the war at any time by removing them from the map. However, a major power may never exceed the indicated limit of units on a foreign war card. By the way, that add leaders by removing them from the map, I guess it's just free and you can do it whenever the fuck you like. So like if you just lost a battle, maybe you could do it. That feels a little like cheating. But, you know, I just don't know. I just don't know. Okay. I'm basically begging them to put the kind of ironclad wording in that causes bloat by saying something like that. So, yeah, they cannot. However, a major power may never exceed the indicated limit of units in a foreign war card. Major power units in a foreign war card cannot return home until they've eliminated all the independents. Militia fighting a foreign war are not subject to die rolls for desertion in winter. If at any time the number of units of the major power participating in the war falls below the minimum indicated, the first units that player recruits must go to the foreign war until the minimum is restored. War of Brittany, Castile intervention. If the War of Brittany, Mad War, Foreign War, is active, Castile can build up to 2 Castilian militia per impulse directly onto this card to support the Bretons. The number of Castilian militia on the card... See, I guess this is... The rules for the French and Portuguese foreign wars are similar. There's special rules for the other two, and that's why they're separated out in that initial sentence. Can build up to 2 Castilian militia per impulse directly onto the card to support the Bretons. The number of Castilian militia on the card after such a build may never exceed the number of independent Bretons. Whenever both Castilian militia and Bretons are present on the card and the French player inflicts losses on them, remove first a Breton independent, then a militia to keep the numbers as balanced as possible. If at the end of a Spanish impulse Castile is supporting the foreign war in Brittany with at least 2 militia, Spain may take an extra roll on the Mesta table using the modifiers applicable at that time. The extra roll may only be taken once per turn, and if taken, substitutes for the opportunity to extend the impulse with a resource. If a foreign war with Brittany is active in the winter phase, the Spanish player also receives an extra roll on the Mesta table. It sounds to me... Oh, only once per turn. Okay. I wonder if there's something... Oh, fuck. I hope that's where it was. I think it is. All right. Yes, once per turn, but I don't know how you remember that they did it that turn. There doesn't seem to be a reminder for that. Ottoman-Venetian War. In this specified foreign war, okay, here's the Bowman. And they are Ottomans for this, but let's keep looking, because they're not over in the minors and independents. They wouldn't be. They're not on the map. But why weren't they given a name? This special foreign war is fought exclusively between Christian and Muslim naval units. These aren't naval units. The naval units that participate are added to the game when the event is played. The surviving units from the winning side are awarded to the winning powers, along with additional land units. Follow these steps when the event is played. First, place 5 naval units. Christian units are 1 Venetian and 1 Spanish. Muslim units are 3 Ottoman, reserved for this war on the event card. They have crossed swords in the upper right. Place the Great Captain with the Christian naval units, even if he's currently captured or besieged or off map. Place Kamal Reis with a battle rating of 1 with the Ottoman naval units. If Kamal Reis was in play, remove the counter with battle rating of 2 from the map. It will return at the end of the foreign war. If Kamal Reis has already been replaced by Barbarossa, he returns just for this foreign war. If Venice is allied to the Muslims when the event is played, deactivate Venice. It will not be able to ally to the Muslims while this war is active. The Portuguese player controls the Venetian naval squadrons in the war in this case, or if Venice was neutral when the war started. Okay. Now the player who played the event decides whether or not to undertake a free fight foreign war action to start resolving the war. When resolving it, all naval units on each side roll 2 dice against their opponents, regardless of who paid. Kamal Reis always contributes a die to the Muslim. The Great Captain contributes 2 dice. If either this is an initial free action at the start of the war, and the event was played by a Christian, or the fight foreign war action was taken by the Christian player who spent 2 CPs on the action instead of the usual 1. If such cases do not occur, the Great Captain contributes 1 die. Great. The side, and again, you can see why this can't be put on a card, right? And it's a part of why I just don't believe that CDG is an effective way to give this level of depth of event-driven game. Something like EU works a lot better. And I would argue that EU POP has the same problem where they're trying to fit too much information on little cards. You shouldn't have to refer into the rules if you've got cards, except maybe in one or two cases, right? If there's something, and it's got to be pretty fundamental to the game. It can't just be like one of many foreign wars with all these special rules. The combat follows the usual rules for naval combat, with an enemy squadron being sunk for every 2 full hits. Ignore odd hits with the following exceptions. Neither side retreats. Christian casualties are selected by the player spending the CPs. Leaders may never be eliminated by the combat. Naval units eliminated by the combat are removed from the game rather than entering a powers force pool. Remember, these are counters that you added to the game just for this event. The war continues until only one side remains. Players who control a naval squadron on the foreign war card, including the Venetian one, may spend 1 CP of the fight foreign war action during their impulse. What about where you can spend 2? What's up with that? If Venice allies with a different power during the course of the war, the new major power ally may take such an action on behalf of the Venetians. There is no -1 card penalty for any power while this war is active. When the war ends, the winning player moves the surviving naval units to controlled home ports, 1 port per winning power. If the Muslim side won, move the units to a single Berber home space or the Otranto space if controlled. Winning Spanish units are placed in any Spanish-controlled port in Italy or Sicily. What if they don't have one? A surviving Venetian arrives at Venice. All surviving Ottomans can return as naval squadrons or corsairs, as the Muslim prefers. The winning side now receives 1 regular for each of the surviving naval units. Place each regular in the same space as a returning naval unit of the same power. Muslim gets Ottoman regulars. Again, these have the cross on them, but those are Ottoman regulars, right? So I'm guessing all of the bowmen are. We'll get to that if they come up from something else. The Spanish receives a specified Aragonese regular with the returning Spanish unit, and the Venetians receive a specific unit. These have swords on them. They're not part of your force pool unless you win. Kamal Reis is removed from the map if he has already been replaced by Barbarossa. If not, he returns and becomes good again. The Great Captain returns to a controlled Aragonese or Castilian home space that is not under siege. If the Christians won the war, Spain gets 1 victory point, and the power controlling the Venetians gets a point. I guess those could both be Spain. And the Muslims gain 2 if their side wins. Special naval units and regulars that entered the game during this war cannot be rebuilt once they're eliminated. All right, we're going to pause here because I got Raid playing by itself, and I got to just check on it, see if I got to feed it more. It's going on happily on its own. My voice is beginning to go, though. Weird. May just be how frustrated I am or whatever with the game that does it. Minors and independence. The major powers can recruit minors during play to serve as important partners. The minor powers have a common set of rules presented below. All of them. Okay, so some of general rules is in here, but whatever. Not much. All minors have 2 states, active and inactive. Minors may start in either of these states as specified in the scenario setup. The Papacy is a special type of minor power that possesses additional attributes. Okay, if a minor is inactive, doesn't move from its current space, doesn't intercept or avoid battle. If there are 4 fewer land units in this space, they will always withdraw into the fortification and try to withstand siege. If there are 5 or more, they will hold their ground and fight in a field battle. If they lose that battle, they do not retreat their units from the space as usual. Instead, they retain up to 4 and withdraw into the fortification. Any extra land units in excess are eliminated. Inactive naval units remain important to defend if the port is attacked. Changing a power from inactive to active is an activation. Each minor power can be activated by 3 different major powers shown on the entries of the activation lines. Activate, 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 deactivate. In the diplomatic influence table. Note that in the case of the Muslim, some miners can be activated exclusively by one of the two powers of that player. The activation in the Spanish case is joint for Aragon and Castile. Otherwise, French and Portuguese, only the main power can do it. This might affect if you're using the secondary power as home card. You might not be able to do it. I don't know. Minor powers can be activated in the following way. An event that has caused the diplomatic status of the minor power to be evaluated, which is resolved by procedure 21.6, or that allows direct alignment, place the influence markers of that minor in resolved this turn in this case. The winning power gets to activate this minor as their new ally if they are listed if they are listed as an activate power at the bottom of the diplomatic influence. A major power declared war on this minor, and a different major power intervened according to step 4 of the war declaration procedure. Remember, well, no, don't remember. I think you figure out who gets the minor, and then you declare whether or not you're actually supporting them. Oh, no. Okay, so that's how this works, but I'm not looking at it here. So I don't know if it's how it works. Declaration on neutral minors. The player announces whether or not for each declaration, add war, declaration on a minor triggers the resolution of that minor's diplomatic status. Yeah. In this game, you roll to see if the minor joins a particular side, and then that side is the only side that can defend the minor. I talked about Empires in Arms earlier. I was wrong about it. I just realized how it worked. In Empires in Arms, if you declare war on a minor, any player can get to support that. Any player who declares that they're willing to support the minor is in the resolution procedure. If you don't declare that you're going to support it, you're not in the resolution procedure. And the cheap thing that happened in that was not, oh, you got control, but you're not going to defend it. That doesn't work in Empires in Arms. The cheap thing in that was France convinced Prussia to declare war on all the miners near the French border and then not prosecute those wars, so that France had the best chance of defending those miners. That felt really, really cheap to me. But yeah. Prussia basically drove the miners into the French camp. Just, all right. Anyway, where are we? As I take a tangent, but you know, if you're still with this, you're not with it to learn the game anymore. You're in it just, I don't know, because like, for some stupid reason, you like to hear me cursing and ranting. I have no idea at this point. Okay. Where are we here? So activation procedure. First, you place an allied marker with the power that has just activated you. A power currently at war with this minor has the choice to immediately declare war, at no cost, on the major power that is activating the minor. The power may only declare war if none of the restrictions at all time apply. If the power chooses to declare war, add an at-war marker to the appropriate box of the diplomatic status. If the power declines to declare war, units of that power occupying spaces controlled by the minor are displaced. I think the war ends with the minor, if someone intervenes in that case. Place square and triangular control markers. Remove control markers from any keys in strategic spaces of this minor, where the control marker is from a major power that was eligible to activate this minor during the status check. Units that are not from either this minor power or the activating power are displaced if they occupy one of this minor power's home spaces that just had a control marker removed. Strategic spaces and keys of this minor power that now have no control marker on them are then marked with the square and triangular powers of their activating power. So here's the thing. If you're capable of activating a minor, you probably don't want to go to war with it, for the simple fact that if you do gain control of things of it, and then end up at peace, you have to give that territory back. And it's just, in most cases, it probably works fine, but I can see some situations where it's going to work out kind of wonky for you. Place hexagonal control markers. Remove control markers from any non-strategic and non-key spaces of this minor where the control markers from a power that was eligible to activate it. Units that are not from either the minor power nor the activating power are displaced if they occupied. Okay, this is fucked up. Because this does not put any specific. So the way it's worded, you remove control markers where the control marker is from a major power that was eligible to activate the minor. Oh, you're not eligible to activate one if you're at war with it. Okay. But units that are not from either the minor power or the activating power are displaced. I'm going to use some common sense here. If you're invading a minor and you do not go to peace with the minor to avoid a major power conflict, you don't give back spaces. Like, if you're occupying part of that minor, you get to hold it. That doesn't appear to be the case the way this is written, but I think that's the intention. Of course, there are people who are like, no, play the rules as they're written. Doesn't matter, unless there's errata, which there might be, but I don't care. Okay, so yeah, the hexagonals get placed on the simple spaces and whatnot. Remove at war markers. Remove all at war markers from this minor power's column on the diplomatic status. It's now controlled by its major power ally for all wars that it's involved in. So you don't have separate wars with minors. Activate minors. Activating a minor has the following benefits. Military units and leaders of the minor are treated just like units and leaders of the major power. They can now move, fight, retreat, avoid battle just like other units of that major. The only difference is that minor power units have no impulse or cards of their own. Military units of the minor powers have one additional characteristic in the winter. These units can return to home keys of the minor power as if it were an additional key. The units of their major power ally do not get to do this. If the minor has regular units in the countermix, the controlling major power may use the raise regular troops action to build a regular unit of the minor in one of the minor power's home spaces. Sounds like you can only build one per action. Not clear, but it does seem to be singular there. It's weird because raise regular troop generates one regular. So there doesn't seem to be a limit to how many times you can use it. So I guess you can build as many as you like. Trying to parse out, the meaning and whatnot. If the minor power has naval squadrons in its mix, the controlling power may use build naval squadron action to build a naval unit of the major power in one of this major power's ports. Yeah. All right. We're getting to deactivations. I got to pause because I got to swap batteries. Lit a pipe, but had to take off my shirt because it's so damn hot. I mean, it's not. It's like probably getting close to the comfort temperature most people keep their houses in the winter, but it's much hotter than I'm used to. It's like the temperature I turn off my space heater in my bedroom that I was getting nauseous, and there's nothing I can do about it. The heat rises up here, and I need a certain amount of heat to keep the place from getting moldy. All right, deactivation. Changing a power to active to inactive is called deactivation. Minor powers can be deactivated in either of two ways. An event card causes the minor to be deactivated, or a diplomatic status of the minor to be evaluated, and a power that is not the minor power's former ally won that evaluation. Whenever a new pope arrives, the minor power of the papacy is immediately deactivated. It will reactivate once its diplomatic status is reevaluated, which I think immediately happens. If the papacy was at war with a major Christian power, peace is immediately signed between those powers. Deactivation. Remove the allied markers from the box that cross-references the powers. All control markers from the miner's former ally are removed from the minor power's home spaces. Units from other powers are displaced if they occupy one of these minor power home spaces that just had a control marker removed. Okay, so if you're in the allies' territory but don't own it yet, or maybe you don't want to own it. Move land units to the nearest friendly controlled fortified. Next, blah, blah, blah. Next, all land units and leaders of the minor power return to the nearest friendly controlled fortified home space of that minor. If no such fortified space is available, return them to the nearest unfortified space. If no such space exists, the land units are eliminated. Naval units then return as well. So, if a minor deactivates and is losing a war and has lost some territory, it loses that territory until it, can regain it. Diplomatic influence. That's this chart. We have two diplomacy charts, right? A display that shows alliances and war status and costs for war, and one that shows political power and the cost of obtaining more power. Any player can spend 1 or 2 CPs based on this chart here to raise their little marker a space. The influence may be allocated to any power that lists the active power as either active or deactivate line. Advance the active player's influence marker by 1 level. No influence may be purchased if a power's influence marker is already at 6. Influence may also not be purchased if the influence marker is already in the resolve this turn box. In general, you can do these minors once per turn. There are some exceptions. And this whole chart here, this is dealing with the papacy. We'll go through it. We won't go through the chart, but we'll go through what happens. A minor power's diplomatic status is evaluated based on either event card play or a declaration of war. Diplomatic status may only be evaluated once per turn, except for the fall of Rome to the Muslim control and the Roman Curia event, after which the papacy's influence marker levels are placed in their starting boxes instead of the resolve this turn. For each minor power, ignore a second such event if it occurs while all this minor power's influence markers are in the resolve this turn box. Determine competing powers. This is kind of interesting because I'm not sure what happens if you're declared war on while you're in the resolve this turn. We'll have to see. I may have to puzzle this out in game. If the diplomatic status is evaluated as a result of a declaration of war on a minor power by playing the Sultanate of Fez home event card or by the Papal diplomatic status resolution, all players listed in either activate or deactivate compete and do so regardless of their level of influence over the minor. If diplomatic status is evaluated as the result of a play of an event and the objective is not the papacy, the player playing the event only competes against players listed as either an activate or deactivate power who are at the same level of influence or higher with this minor. If this player's influence marker on the minor is at the highest level than all others, that player automatically wins the procedure. You roll dice. Each competing major power rolls a single die and computes the final total by adding their influence points, if any, with the target minor power to the roll of the die. If the die roll is for the arrival of a new pope, players should also add their affinity points, if any. I don't know what... I think affinity is going to be here, so France automatically has affinity for that pope. But this is the modifier running down here, 1 through 6 to the die roll. If the player with the highest total in step 2 is the winner... Sorry, they are, providing no automatic winner has been declared. In case of a tie, the winner is the power listed highest on the list of activate powers at the bottom of the diplomatic influence. The winner is listed as, if the winner is listed as an activate and does not currently have this power as an ally, then deactivate the power from its current ally and activate it as an ally of the winning power. If the winner is listed as deactivate, then deactivate the power from its current ally. So when you declare war, you might deactivate the miner and leave it on its own. Interesting. All influence markers in the minor powers column of diplomatic influence are placed in the resolve this turn. They will reset to their default positions at the end of the turn. Yeah, so let's say I declare war on a minor that is allied or not allied. Well, if it is allied, I can't declare war on it. Okay. So, because I have to declare war on the major power that's allied to it. If it is, remember, the war markers don't exist for the miners in those cases. So if I declare war on one that's not allied, we make a competition to see who gets the alliance. That person has the option to support the miner, which will activate it if he chooses to. If he chooses not to, I think nothing comes of it from how I'm reading it. So deactivate won't do anything. It just prevents the miner from going to anyone. And activate just says the miner tries to adhere to a major power and get that major power to defend it. And if that major power chooses to defend it, then the power that declared war on the miner has the option to extend that war or not declare war. I think that all works. The only thing I'm iffy about is that the miners would probably adhere to anyone who would defend them, right? Like if their main ally refuses to, they probably would seek someone else out to help them, other than the aggressor. But honestly, like, it's kind of weird because the aggressor might be the one wanting them. And I'm not even sure the aggressor doesn't get a chance. I don't think they do. Like, it would kind of make sense that you threaten a miner and it joins your side. That kind of thing did happen. Major power declared war on this minor power and a different major power intervened according to that. That's 9.4. Let's look back at that. Make sure that that's not the case. I doubt that it is. I don't remember anything along those lines, but I am a little worried. If one or more war declarations were directed on minor, resolve the diplomatic for each minor power. If more than one minor power was the target, order resolution. Remove the power declaring war and any power listed on deactivate. Oh, deactivates don't get to roll. Okay, and neither does the power declaring war. All right. So you can't bully a miner onto your side, which you could kind of argue. I don't want to try to think of a situation in this period, but it did happen. But think of something along the lines of some of the Nazi allies in World War II in East Europe. Yeah, they were afraid of the Soviets, but in a way they were afraid of the Germans as well. So that was kind of it wasn't a declaration of war, but it was, a diplomatic event to push them in partially through fear. I don't know. It may be a weak way of expressing it. Like, you wouldn't actually declare war, but you might say, look, you and I have to be allied or we are going to be at war. All right. Where the fuck am I now? Other than running out of battery again. Okay. If the winner is listed as an activate power and does not currently have this power as an ally, then deactivate the power from its current ally and activate. Yeah, we did that. If it's listed as deactivate, deactivate it from a current ally if possible. Now, I just wanted to go into the war situation. There are other situations that can cause all this. So don't worry about the fact that, like, well, you just declared war, you can't roll for it if you're a deactivate power. That's true. I just wanted to push into that particular situation because I didn't understand what the implications were. Reset influence, yeah, you put all the influence markers in the resolve this turn. They will not be reset. They will be reset to their default positions during the winter, and they can't make another activation attempt. Okay. So that's the general rules for all miners, which is a couple of pages. Okay, that's fair enough. But now we get to all the specific rules for miners. I'm going to swap batteries. I'm going to go check raid. And I think I'm actually going to take a bit of a break here because I'm feeling kind of tired. So yeah, I'm going to be back. We're at page 56 out of 61. Specifics for the miners. And honestly, so I was feeling a little nauseous from coffee. Still have some left. Drinking tea now, which is safer. And the warmth. I don't feel the warmth anymore. Just, I was not feeling good. Maybe I'm sick. I don't know. It keeps happening. All right, the papacy. So we got 2 pages of rules on the minor, the papacy. Yeah, it's a big deal, but... all right, succession for the papacy. Every time a new pope ascends, immediately deactivate the papacy from their current ally. This may cause their units to be displaced. Then remove control markers from all Christian powers from the papal home spaces, even if they were at war with the papacy. Saying that makes me, again, say that you never remove miners that are at war and stay at war. You never remove control markers from miners that were at war and stay at war. Displace any Christian units in papal home spaces. After displacement, check to see if there are regulars, if there are 5 regulars and 1 naval squadron in the papal home spaces. If not, add units to the minimums are restored, placing the units added to the space still under papal control in priority listed. The Pope then can change during the game through mandatory event cards. Yeah, that's how it happens. Either during headline event, the action phase, or in the winter phase when doing a resolve, when doing a mandatory required. Every time a new Pope comes in, or when the appropriate option of the Roman Curia event is played, you do a diplomatic status check for the papacy. Now, note, the Roman Curia is not a new Pope, right? So it has a slightly different effect. The value of their influence marker in the papacy column is added to the diplomacy table. Okay, what's that? The value of the influence marker in the papacy column. I think that'll be the modifier here, I think. And the affinity value on the new Pope's card, but this doesn't happen with a Roman Curia. Whoever gets the highest total wins the status. If the check is triggered as a result of Roman Curia, reset all papal influence from their initial positions after the diplomatic status check, instead of placing them in the resolve this turn, which is to say that the popes can change multiple times. The papacy can change multiple times, but it says if it's triggered as from the Roman Curia, that means if a new pope comes in, it does go in the resolve this turn, and I don't know what that means for the Roman Curia. Let's see. The Roman Curia has a second option that allows any player to deactivate the papacy immediately and without further benefit. So no rolls are made in this case, nor does the Muslim player move influence markers, nor does he receive a card at this time, although he will do so in the next deal if the papacy is still independent. That's got to do with this chart, and we can look at that if things aren't clear, because the papacy is complicated here. The winner of the diplomatic status check, even if Muslim, if they were successful in keeping the papacy deactivated, or a Christian player allied with a Muslim power gains these benefits. If the change of pope happened during the action phase or headline event, the winning player draws a card. If you are a Christian player, allied with the Muslim, keep the papacy inactive. Move 2 influence markers belonging to any player, including your own, 1 level up or 1 level down, influence being the diplomacy stuff, in any combination for any minor power except Navarre or the papacy. The Muslim player always performs these moves if Rome is under Muslim control, though. See enemy of Islam. When a Christian player is allied with the papacy, add the card Papal Bull to that player's hand during the card draw phase. The papal land units may not leave papal home spaces. If forced to retreat to a non-home space, they're eliminated, except for Caesar Borgia. The papal naval squadron is controlled by the allied minor power, major power, just like any other minor. If the papacy is an inactive minor power, the Muslim player draws a card from the deck during the card draw phase. Rome is the Pope's city in the heart of Christendom, so Christian declarations of war against the papacy can be frowned upon. A Christian power who is not currently allied with the papacy can declare war during the action phase. The French did. By paying the cost of 1 random card draw from their hand, the card is placed in the discard pile. A declaration of war of this sort does not trigger a diplomatic status check for the papacy. Its diplomatic status is never changed by the receiving a declaration of war. So I don't know. I don't think there was a specific... So here's the problem. The random card draw, when it happens under certain circumstances, I know it can't be your home card, and it can't be the Papal Bull, and it can't be a mandatory event. I'm not sure that's the case here. I just don't know. In terms of the home cards, I could see why they might get drawn, but in terms of the mandatory events, it feels a little weird. So those are things you shouldn't really have control over, like the death of someone. So I don't know. A declaration of war of this sort does not trigger a diplomatic status check for the papacy. Its diplomatic status is never changed by receiving a declaration of war from a major Christian power. A Christian power at war with the papacy, including the case of Caesar Borgia, Condottieri, will remain at war until the arrival of a new pope, who will return the papacy to an inactive state and cause any Christian units in papal home spaces to be displaced. If the Christian power at war with the papacy controlled Ravenna or Rome and was forced to return either of these spaces, he gets a victory point marker for each. Use the papal victory point markers with the image of Borgia. This award can only be received by each player a maximum of once per game. Now, you get a VP for each, though, so you can get 2 points if you have both once per game. But if you only get 1 and later you get 2, you can't get the points for them both, whatever. Declaring war on the major power that controls the papacy does not imply declaring war on the papacy. Its allied or war status with Christian powers is always tracked independently. And it's not allowed to leave its home areas, so, but its boat is, so I don't know. Conquest of Rome. If a Christian power at war with the papacy gains control of Rome, the papal alliance passes to the Christian power now controlling Rome. Follow the steps of succession for the papacy listed above, allying the papacy to the Christian conqueror. Maybe I'm getting confused. If a Christian power that controls the papacy allies with a Muslim power during the diplomacy phase, it loses control of the papacy. Deactivate the papacy. The Muslim player immediately draws a card from the deck. This loss of control does not occur if the Christian power already allied to the Muslim controls the papacy militarily during headline events or action. If the papacy is inactive, Caesar Borgia is not on the map, and any space in Italy, Sardinia, Corsica, or Sicily is occupied by Muslim land units or controlled by the Muslims, a Christian player may spend CPs to recruit, move, or assault with papal land units within their home spaces, even though they're not a papal ally. If Rome is controlled by the Muslim power, papal units are considered to be able to trace LOC to any fortified space controlled by the Christians. Likewise, if Rome is controlled by the Muslim player in the winter phase, papal units may winter in Ravenna without limit, which is a triangle space. Enemy of Islam. The two Muslim major powers, Nasrid and North Africa, will start all scenarios at war against the papacy, and those wars can never be ended. If the Muslim player controls Rome militarily, though, the following applies. He gets a 5 victory point marker the first time this happens. Perform a diplomacy check in random order for each minor power in the game, including the papacy, by placing Muslim influence markers at level 0 on each minor power. Check as if the Sultanate of Fez home card event had been played. Okay, what? If any, at least that's a card here. Okay. I don't get it. You may now resolve the diplomatic status of another minor using the procedure where all powers compete regardless of their influence. Yeah, I don't know what that means. Like, what effects from the Sultanate of Fez card do I take into play? There's an or. There seems to be one that applies, but whatever. I don't know. If any minor power's diplomatic status has already been resolved this turn, it is still checked. Place the influence markers for that minor power at their start value. Set the Muslim player's influence marker to 0, then check the status. Let's look at the Sultanate of Fez. Add lots of troops. Advance your influence marker with a minor by 1 level in any track other than the papacy. You may now resolve the diplomatic status of another minor using the procedure where all powers compete. That does not sound like it aligns, but the other one is declare war on a major power for no CP cost. If it is not against Spain, you get 4 CPs of actions. Neither of those sound like they have anything to do with this. And I'm sure this does not. I don't know. I have no idea what they're talking about there. But whatever. After resolution, all influence markers are set to initial levels. Not so with the rest of the resolved minor powers, whose influence markers are all set to resolve this turn. All Christian major powers will be in a state of war with all Muslim powers for the rest of the game. While Rome is conquered by the Muslim player, new popes will continue to enter the game as normal, in exile, and a Christian player allied to the papacy does receive the papal bull at the start of his turn. If all papal home spaces are controlled by the Muslim, he may move the influence markers as a result of the arrival of the new pope, even if he doesn't win control of the papacy during the diplomacy status check. He may move the influence markers. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? And the Muslim player draws an extra card at the start of each turn. I don't understand what any of that means. Like, this whole section is a blur to me. Now, chances are the Muslims are not going to get control of the papacy, but this is the first place where I'm like, I have no fucking clue what the game's talking about. All right, Caesar Borgia, except for, like, the blur of not knowing what the game's about at all, except I'm trying to collect victory points. It's a Euro, damn it. Caesar Borgia brings an extra leader onto the map who acts as a leader for the power playing the event. These two rules always apply. If Borgia is controlled by the same power that's allied with the papacy, papal units in his formation may move or retreat outside papal home spaces and may gain control of those spaces, putting them under control of the papacy's major ally. Borgia is removed from the map during the card draw phase if any pope other than Alexander VI is in power in Rome. If Alexander VI is the current pope, Borgia remains in play during this phase. Okay. Wonder if I'll remember that. However, there are 2 conditions, both related to Alexander VI, where even more special rules apply to Borgia. Great! Alexander VI becomes Pope, Borgia's on the map. if Alex... Now, he's removed during card draw if Alexander VI is not on the map, but okay. If Alexander VI comes in play while Borgia's on the map, and the papacy, after its diplomatic status check, is now controlled by a different Christian player than the one who controls Borgia, displace Borgia and papal units in his formation to Rome. So I guess Borgia's, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out, is Borgia able to move papal units that the player isn't allied with? I don't know. He is now controlled by the Christian player allied with the papacy. If the diplomatic check was won by the Muslim player, there's no effect on Borgia's status. The Pope is Alexander VI, papacy inactive Muslim plays event. What? Okay. If Alexander VI is the Pope, the papacy is inactive, i.e. the Muslim player won the most recent diplomatic status check, and the Muslim player plays Caesar Borgia, condottieri, then the Muslim player gains control over the papacy and Borgia as a limited major power. Immediately apply these effects. Add the papal bull card to the Muslim hand. If it's in another player's hand, that player may draw a new card. Remove all papal regulars from the map. Now place the Borgia leader and 7 papal regulars in a single space in this priority order: Rome, Ravenna, Ancona, based on which is under papal control. If the papacy does not control any spaces on the map, displace any units in Ancona and place all papal units in Ancona. All of the following rules now pertain to Borgia and the papacy. The Muslim player controls Borgia and all papal units, even though they are not considered to be allied to any Muslims. The papal units are considered to be at war with all powers on the map, including the Muslims. Place out war markers in the papacy column with all major powers as a reminder. They can also attack inactive minor powers other than Navarre. Yeah, good luck getting to Navarre with the papacy. No diplomatic status check is performed for any of the minor powers entering a new war state. Okay. I mean, this is such a weird situation, but Muslim units may not attack papal units nor enter papal-controlled spaces. Papal units can control spaces using their own control markers. In the case of fortified, they have control markers. Really? I wonder where they are. They're on the back of something, I assume. In the case of fortified port spaces, they do not need to comply with naval requirements for assaulting, which is good because they only have 1 boat. In the winter of turn 4, exclusively, the papal units return to fortified spaces, Rome, as if they were another major power and a papal regular is received as a reinforcement in Rome. On turn 5, exclusively, they may make spring deployments from Rome. Okay. When Alexander VI dies, or the Muslim player loses control of the papacy by play of a Roman Curia event, the Muslim player gains a victory point for every key space, strategic space, or fortress with a papal control marker in Italy, including Nice, but excluding the papal home spaces, Corsica, Sardinia, or Sicily. Displace all papal units that are not in papal home spaces, then remove papal control markers from all spaces, returning control of each space to its home power. If an inactive minor regains a space in this fashion, it restores any units that started the game in that space back on the map. How do you get it again? The papacy is inactive, and the Muslim plays the Caesar Borgia card. And it gives him, like, a capability to do some shit. All right, let's do Navarre because it's very short. Diplomatic influence on Navarre costs 1 CP for the first 3 levels and 2 for the remaining 3. Is this something special? Yeah, most of the countries, well, I don't know. Papacy has different costs too. So, I don't know why we need a rule for that. The entry of Pope Julius on turn 5 helps the alignment of Navarre to the Spanish player if the event Clash of Interests of Navarre is played. As specified in 9.4, fuck me, you may not declare war on Navarre unless the level of diplomatic influence over inactive Navarre by some other opposing power is at least 2 levels higher than your own. All right. We're going to stop. I need to run batteries. I'm getting sick feeling from reading these, and we're on Naples. Okay, the Naples event. Naples has a minor power like any other until Death of Ferrante is played, required by the winter of turn 4. Till that time, all strategic spaces of minor power are considered simple, unfortified circular spaces. Therefore, Naples is only worth 1 victory point. This is what these weird spaces with triangles and circles are. So those are going to increase in value after his death, which is fine. When the event death happens, Naples ceases to exist as a minor. Its spaces all become independent, which is why they turn gray. At least some of them do. These guys are split half gray, half brown. It's not clear. It's clear there's a different color, but here without the line dividing, it all kind of blurs together to me. But yeah, I can see when I shift my position. From here it's harder to tell. Remove the major power influence markers from Naples' column of diplomacy. Remove any major power control markers. See Caesar Borgia from the spaces in the Kingdom of Naples on the map, except in Naples and Otranto, whose spaces retain whatever their current control marker is. Displace any non-Naples unit in the kingdom, other than those in Naples and Otranto. Remove all units belonging to the Kingdom of Naples from the game. Remove the Treaty of Barcelona card from the game deck if it was not already removed, causing a redraw. Follow one of the cases in the step below, depending on the state of Naples before the event. Now, this is the state of Naples is the thing that we're going to have to worry about for the early part of the game as to what happens. If a major power controls Naples' space at this time, the major power controlling Naples automatically goes to war with Spain and France, receiving 2 regulars in the Naples space. If Naples was controlled by North Africans or Portuguese, and they do not want to go to war with these powers, move all their units from Naples and remove the control marker from Naples and immediately jump to case 3. If the Papacy controls Naples at the time of Ferdinand's death, because of the Muslims, see Caesar Borgia, add 2 papal regulars to the Naples space. I think it's possible the Papacy can control it without the Muslim conquest, but whatever. If neither major power nor the Papacy controls Naples, apply these effects. Place 2 independent units in the capital of Naples, and if no power controls Otranto, 2 more independents in this space. After resolving the above cases, Spain and France divide the spaces of the minor as indicated on the event card. Spain gets, looks like the south, and France gets the north. All other spaces remain independent with no control markers. France and Spain enter a state of war. France gets 2 regulars each in L'Aquila and Gaeta. Spain gets 4 Aragonese in Atella. From this point on, while L'Aquila is controlled by France and Atella by Spain, each may winter with a full formation in its units in these spaces. Sounds like both conditions have to be true for you to be able to winter. Weird, but okay. Up to the size allowed by a single leader present. Consider these 2 spaces as if they were home keys only for purposes of eligibility for return of units. These spaces have a small symbol to remind you of this. There's a little square, just as there is with Otranto. Gaeta, Cerignola, and Garigliano in the Kingdom of Naples, which were previously treated as simple, unfortified spaces, are now going to be strategic for the rest of the game, causing them to be worth a victory point. Independent spaces and the Canarian guanches. Great independent spaces do not belong to any major or minor and are thus not subject to diplomatic influence nor declarations of war. Units belonging to any power may enter an independent space at any time. Independent units in these spaces may not move. They simply defend against any power that may be attacking them, just like an inactive power. If they are in an unfortified space, they never retreat. So if they're not eliminated in a field battle, the attacker must retreat, an exception to usual retreat rules. Guanches are subject to special rules listed below. Independent naval units never move from the port they occupy and contribute to protecting their space against an assault. The Corsair of Jerba has its own special rules. See below. Independent units always considered as regulars for combat. Tribal units in the tribal insurrection are considered militia, however. Are considered militia. However, Guanches are considered militia unless they are in a formation with a leader Ben Como. Independent regulars cannot be built by players with the recruit regular, although certain events may bring new independents into play. When a major power controls an independent space, that space is no longer independent. Such a space will be controlled by one major power or another for the rest of the game unless it becomes independent again due to a card like City-State Rebels. Spaces in the Canaries, though, can be recaptured by the Guanches, and Milan or Metz can be recovered by Maximilian. Ragusa, over here, is an independent space that starts the game with several squadrons in place there. I see one. No, with a naval squadron. Wow. This unit makes it difficult to assault the city and prevents directly naval transport into the space unless eliminated. When a major power attacks Ragusa's naval unit in the port, Ragusans add 2 dice for defense of the port instead of 1. Ragusa starts with, now they say the city's harbor favors defense. Somewhere else, it doesn't seem to limit it to just the Ragusans getting the bonus, so I don't know. Ragusa starts with 5 independent regulars, so it fights a field battle whenever it is attacked. If a major power controls Ragusa, they get an extra victory point marker on their player card as long as they maintain control. The player control, and is there any reason here? Ragusa is also a key, so it's like, you know, a 3-point city. Or, no, 2-point city. I don't know. Whatever. Oh, no, that's not. Yeah, 2-point city for most. Whatever. Where are we? The power controlling Ragusa will have the option to receive resources in the winter phase. There's a die roll thing. If Ragusa becomes independent again, place 5 independent units in Ragusa instead of the 1 regular as instructed by the event. Will I remember that? Probably not, unless it says on the card. Tunis and the Pirates of Jerba. Throughout the Middle Ages, the island of Jerba near Tunis was more or less independent pirate haven. Control of the independent space of Tunis grants the controlling power an independent Corsair naval unit from Jerba to use as its own naval unit, including its Corsair characteristic, as long as it maintains control of that space. At the start of each turn, receive this Corsair as a free reinforcement in Tunis if it's been sunk. The moment the mandatory event Algiers Regency is played, you remove the Corsair from the game. The piracy VPs count against your 6 that each player can get with Naus or naval squadrons. Sforza, Lord of Milan. It just goes on and on. The Sforza family was the dominant family in Milan, and they actively participated in the wars. The city of Milan starts with 8 independent regulars, so it fights a field battle whenever it's attacked. If Milan becomes independent again as a result of city-state rebels, place 8 independent regulars instead of the 1. Again, will I remember? And oddly, I don't see a special rule for Metz, who has 4 independent regulars, but like there's special rules for it under the Maximilian. But the Guanches, native Canarians. Next to the exploration map, there's a map of the Canary Islands. Oh, yes, there is. This auxiliary map is considered to be part of the main map for all gameplay purposes. The 7 islands are connected to each other by land connection lines, some of which are considered mountain passes because the water has big waves on it or something. Looks more like they're further apart, but like not everything connects to each other, so I don't know. Movement between the islands can be completed without naval transport, although it's also possible to use the ports and naval transport rules. Canary Islands is considered to be adjacent to Cape Bojador Sea Zone over here, which is indicated there. Units located in spaces on this map are not obligated to return home in the winter. Militia from major powers are not subject to disbanding while they're in the Canary Islands. Castile only. The Spanish player can never move Aragonese land units and the leader Ferdinand to the Canary Islands, as their conquest was purely Castilian. All other powers are not limited, except the powers of Beltranejos and Catalonia, which cannot enter there. Yeah, I would hope not. I mean, so one of the problems is both the Castilian and Aragonian civil wars, certainly the Castilian one, could have conceivably ended up with Isabella being overthrown. Catalonia a lot less likely, but there's no possibility of that in the game. And what would happen in that? It would change the whole nature of the game. So like the design of the game prevents really weird shit from happening, which like the really cool shit that would influence the world as a whole, which kind of disappoints me. All right, activating guanches. Although the guanches are independent units, they follow special rules that allow them to recruit, move, attack assault units belonging to major powers that occupy a space in the Canary Islands. There are 4 cards that affect the Guanche people. Bencomo, Island People's Pride, Great Drowsiness, oh, I feel that. Guanche Rebellion on La Gomera. Playing one of these cards as an event allows construction and movement of Guanche units. During that impulse, the Guanches are controlled by the player that played the event. This is the only way players can use CPs on behalf of the Guanches. The cost to build them is 1 CP, same as militia. They operate as follows. They can never leave the Canary Islands. Probably wise. They may never control spaces. Instead, they remove control markers from other powers at no cost when entering an unoccupied space controlled by another power, even fortified spaces. If they enter an unfortified space with units of another power, a field battle occurs. If the Guanches win, remove the control marker. If they enter a fortified space defended by enemy units, they may assault it directly without having to set up a siege in an earlier impulse, because again, they're only triggered by a few cards. So anywhere where like it wouldn't be possible to conduct a siege, basically you can conduct one immediately. Bit of hot dog in my tooth. Follow the normal rules for assaulting. The Guanche units never need to establish a line of communication. They kind of can't. Although treated as militia for combat, they're never affected by cards targeting militia and never eliminated during winter. Unless there's only 1 unit in the starting space, the minimum formation of the Guanches is 2 units and their leader. If on the map, can never move alone or be abandoned in a space. Okay. If a Guanche stack with a leader is split in 2, its leader is always added to the formation with more units. A player is considered to have conquered one of the Canary Islands when he controls all of its spaces. If you have Gran Canaria or Tenerife, you get a marker that's worth 1 victory point. Also, if you control all of the Canaries, you get an additional victory point marker. So if a player controls all 5, they can move from Ocean Zone 1 to A without having to make navigation checks. And that's what Columbus also allows. All right. That was the grand list of special rules. Now on to victory. The final and 7th phase of the turn is victory determination. You check to see if you win. Catalonia, Beltranejos, and Nasrids have to be checked to see if they surrender, and you resolve their surrenders, which all the surrender rules are here under victory for some reason. Avoid victory point markers for Catalan ownership of Barcelona Reconquista or Nasrid resistance if applicable. Okay. Check to see if France earned any victory points for Lord of Italy. See if there's a winner. Move the turn marker. There are 2 ways to win the game. Automatic victory and victory point accumulation. Yeah, but there's kind of a third. It's sort of victory point accumulation, but it's different. Always remember that victory points are indicated by either by occupation of keys in strategic spaces or by a marker on your player card. And we could use a number marker to track the number of strategic spaces or something like that. Somebody was mentioning use cubes to help highlight them, because they do kind of get hidden by the pieces on the board. That's the problem. Surrender of a major power. Start the victory. Oh, okay. Surrender condition. Start victory determination by checking to see if any major powers have surrendered to an enemy. A power is considered to have surrendered when it does not control any home keys. France can't surrender because it always owns Paris. Specific powers can also surrender if other requirements are met. The following powers are eliminated from play if they surrender: the Nasrid Kingdom, the Principality of Catalonia, and the Beltranejos faction. So basically, 3 of the players have a possibility of losing one. 3 of the players have a possibility of losing one of their powers. A power that has surrendered but not eliminated from play may not use an action to construct any units until they regain control of a home key. The surrendered power remains in play with the units they have on the board and any units they may receive from events. If they regain control of a home key, they can immediately recruit again. This does not include militia, such as a power is eligible to receive during the winter phase. I don't remember getting militia in the winter. Let's go check that. 18.6, huh? What was up with that? Each major power adds 1 regular of their choice to a home key that is not controlled. Remember, the regular received by the North Africans can be played. Principality, Catalonia, and Nasrid Kingdom will receive 1 militia instead of a regular in control, fortified, or strategic. Okay. That's what it is. It's a special case if you're surrendered that you get the militia. All right. The Nasrids. Surrender conditions. Spain may compel the Nasrids to surrender if one of the following conditions applied. The Spanish control all 3 Nasrid keys, Granada, Elmira, and Malaga. If the Spanish player controls Granada and one other Nasrid key, Spain may optionally declare the surrender of the Nasrid Kingdom. If such a surrender is chosen, a Morisco uprising occurs immediately, as detailed below. Immediate effects. Spanish player gets a victory point marker for the... This is the historical situation, I believe. Like, they created... the Granadan emir basically agreed to be a vassal, but then kind of didn't comply. The Muslim player moves up to 4 Nasrid land units, regulars or cavalry, from anywhere on the map to a friendly North African home key. Move the Nasrid leader Tom Bombadil to this space. If he's captured, he remains a captive. If he's not yet entered the game, move him here from off map. These displaced Nasrids are treated as if they were North African units for all purposes until eliminated. See also Morisco uprisings. We have to swap batteries. And I'll take a moment to rant a little bit more. I mean, this has taken a ridiculous amount of time, but it's because I have to read everything, right? Like most rule books, I can skip through and get 1 or 2 points out of a column of text, but everything here is interspersed with the special rules, like just fed into every column. And it's really hard to get a picture of what the fuck's going on when that's all the case. Now, special rules are hard to remember, and I understand the advantage to building the rules like this as a reference material, but it is a pain in the ass to go through. And just fucking imagine teaching somebody this game. Like, I got at least one viewer who's like, it's a great game, there's great strategic depth. Every time I teach it, I hand out these player aids and nobody has any problem and everything. And I'm like, okay, great. Maybe you guys are familiar and love modern Euros and are associated with that kind of, here's some charts with the relationships between everything, and I'm not going to explain much of it. I'm not used to that. It doesn't, gaming doesn't work that way for me. So like, but from the reactions I'm getting from most people, not just from my reading of the rules, but people who've attempted to look at this, it is almost universally like a negative of like, yeah, this was just undoable. Now, for me, Virgin Queen came pretty close to this. So I might actually be able to cope with this better because it's worse and closer to an EU type experience. Although, again, it's just not long enough to qualify, right? Anyway, let's jump back in. If Malaga or Elmira were controlled by the Nasrids at the time of the surrender, you get troops there. Okay, I'm not going to remember this shit, right? So fuck it. The Muslim player gets a victory point. Use the Alhambra victory point markers for this. For every 3 Castilian or Aragonese home spaces controlled at the time of surrender. Consider Zahara and Gibraltar as worth 2 spaces each. The Spanish player takes control of all Nasrid control spaces in Castile, Aragon, or the Nasrid Kingdom, except those already marked with Morisco uprising markers or with Morisco regulars present. Now, the Moriscos showed up back here at the thing that I'm like, I can't cope. Which means that I'll accept the surrender without, like, knowing what its effects are, right? And that's one of the problems. I'm going to be making uninformed decisions throughout this game. That's okay. That's how I played EU the first time. Maybe the first few times. If Genoa was allied to the Nasrid, it is deactivated. I guess they're the only ones who can ally with Nasrid. Remove Muslim influence marker with Genoa from the diplomatic influence. They will no longer ally with any Muslims. Remove all Nasrid leaders from the game except Tom Bombadil. Remove all non-Morisco Nasrid units on the map from the game except those previously moved to a North African key. From this moment on, no more Nasrid units can be recruited except for the Corsair due to the effects of the Morisco uprising. All Nasrid-controlled spaces outside the Kingdom of Castile, Aragon, or Nasrid Kingdom become North African-controlled. Remove the Nasrid home card from the game. Remove a bunch of other cards that, have to do with the Nasrid Kingdom, really. Place the Sultans of Fez Wattasid Dynasty card as the Muslim ruler. This ruler remains in place until the end of the game. Now, we start off with... We start off with Muli Hassan, and we'll get somebody else. From this time forward, all spaces that were initially Nasrid home spaces will be considered Castilian home spaces until the end of the game, except for those affected by the Morisco uprising. If City-State Rebels is successfully played against a Nasrid home space, place a Morisco regular instead of a Nasrid unit on the space. Freed by the event. If the 2 Morisco regular units were already on the map, displace one of them and place it there. This Morisco follows the rules for Morisco uprising while on the map, which I can't remember what they were. Morisco uprisings can result from city-state rebels and the Morisco uprising in the same turn. Okay, Catalonia. If Barcelona is controlled by a major power other than Catalonia in the victory determination phase, Catalonia surrenders to the Spanish. Remove all Catalan units from the game, including the leader of Anjou. Place a Catalan control marker in each Catalan home space controlled by them. Now remove all Catalan control markers from play. Wait, what? France scores 1 victory point. Why am I doing this? Like, can't this be combined into one step? Because they're not going to be there. Scores 1 victory point. Use victory point markers for Barcelona. For each pair of Catalan markers removed from play from this list of spaces, 2 spaces, Roussillon, Girona, Palmos, Tarragona, the original Catalan home spaces. France scores 1, again using Barcelona, For each 3 Catalan control markers removed from play from the rest of the Aragonese home spaces, each Aragonese home key will count as 2 Catalan markers. If a control marker was removed from a space that is not a Catalan home space, it becomes controlled by its home power. So like if a French space was captured by the Catalans or something. I don't know. A really weird situation, right? I think it's probably most likely to happen to Beltranejos spaces. But whatever. If a control marker is removed from a Catalan home space and that space contains no French units, award control of the space to Aragon. If, however, it does contain French units, it's awarded to the French. Remove the Catalan home card from the game. It's no longer used. The Beltranejos. All right, temporary surrender. If at any time during the action phase the Beltranejos no longer control any of their home keys, they cease to exist as an active faction. But this is temporary. The Portuguese player may not play cards as CP for Beltranejos except when he plays the Joana la Beltraneja home card as an event, not as points. If Beltranejos or Portuguese units, the latter only if the Peace of Alcasovas has not been signed, recapture a Beltranejos home key, the Beltranejos regains their active status. Permanent surrender condition. The Beltranejos ceases to exist permanently if during victory determination it does not control any key or strategic home spaces. Before it was just keys, right? Yeah. It also surrenders immediately when Treaty of Tordesillas event occurs. And that's when Joanna is forced into a nunnery or something. Permanent surrender. Remove Beltranejos home card. Remove all their leaders from the game. Remove all Beltranejos units from the map. Units of the faction may re-enter play due to the resistance of Beltranejos event. Remove all their control markers. Didn't we just do this? No. These spaces are now controlled by the home power for that space, whatever it may be. All Beltranejos home spaces without control markers are now considered Castilian home spaces and are controlled by Castile. It doesn't look like you get any victory points for doing well with the Beltranejos, as opposed to the Catalans who get or the Nasrid, who get a pile of victory points for their power. Interesting. Okay, automatic military victory. Each player in the game can earn an automatic military victory if they get enough keys through their powers combined. There are 36 key spaces on the map, and each player wins the game if he places the last of his square control markers from his player card on the map. Each time a player controls a key, he must place one of his square markers from his player card on that space. If the space is lost, the marker is returned to his player card. Same as Here I Stand. All players except the Spanish player must control all the home keys of their main power to be eligible. They're the ones with the white stripes. And the interesting case here is the Muslims, who have 2 that they don't control and cannot control until later in the game. And that they each award 2 victory points for control by their home power. These unique square control markers are not usable in other spaces. The exact number of keys required by a player for a military victory and the number of home keys each player starts with are shown on the table below. So there is a bit of a problem here, which is for anyone except Spain, if your home keys, if you don't have your home keys, but you have all of these placed, what the hell happens if you capture another key? I don't know. Maybe you're just not allowed to capture another key. Because, I mean, it should never happen. But I could see it happening with the Muslims especially because they've got these 2 that they cannot. So they could be doing quite well early in the game. Anyway. In order to be eligible for victory, none of the keys may contain an unrest or plague marker. Automatic military victory is achieved during any phase of the game. The game ends immediately even though the turn hasn't reached victory determination. In the unlikely case that two players each earn an automatic victory from the same action, award the victory to the player with the most victory points at that moment. VP by accumulation. Military victories are rare. The game is usually decided by the victory determination phase by the accumulation of VP. The base VP for all powers is determined by the number of keys and strategic spaces a player controls that do not contain unrest or plague. The base reward for strategic is 1. Keys are worth 1 except for the home spaces of France, North Africa, and Portugal, which are worth 2 each. The same keys only award 1 if they're not controlled by their home power. Special VPs are those specifically created by certain powers as follows. Each special VP has its own special marker framed in the color of the applicable power. And we are not going to go through them all, but they're all listed here, which is kind of cool. Then there's bonus VPs, those that can be gained by any player. These markers are framed in no specific color, except VPs received from piracy, which are limited to 6 and are framed in each major power's color as a reminder of that limitation. Piracy, resource chits, overseas voyages, spice trade, cartography, rise of universities events, when you capture a rival leader in combat the first time, when you control the Canary Islands, the winner or runner-up of headline events get victory points. Forgot about that. And Ragusa. During the victory determination phase, update each power's victory point total on the victory point track. I think I'm going to do that as I go because counting all those triangles is going to be impossible. Everything else is on the card and can be counted. There really should be a track for the triangles or something. I don't know. I don't know how much that would help. All powers then check to see if they have achieved one of the 3 victories listed below. If after checking there's still no winner, advance the turn marker. Standard victory. If it's turn 4 or later and the player has achieved at least 48 or more victory points, the game ends with a standard victory. The player with the highest victory point total is the winner. If 2 or more players tie, the player with the highest total on the previous turn is declared winner. Yeah, I'm going to remember that. If the tie persists, continue to check previous turns until the tie is broken. I mean, we can write it down. There's a victory sheet, right? Doesn't feel like it should be necessary, but I guess if we start getting close to the 48, we'll start worrying about that. If the tie persists, continue to check previous turns until the tie is broken. Players should record victory point total for each player at the end of each turn in the victory record sheet. Yeah. All right. If it's turn 4 or later during victory determinations, a player's victory point total is less than 48, but at least 7 more than all the other players. Each of the other players. It wins a domination victory. They're good at using the correct. If you say all the other players, you're like, well, I'm beginning to sound like Empires in Arms is horrible victory conditions that they may or may not do what they seem to. Like, there's different ways of interpreting. If no player is won by the end of turn 7, award the win to the player with the highest VP total at the time. If they're tied, the player with the highest total in the previous turn wins. If they were tied in that earlier turn, proceed backwards 1 turn at a time until it's ended. Yeah. So if you did only calculate the victory points at the end of each turn, there's no reason for that track there. But yeah. Okay. That is the rules of the game. I've got a little bit of cleanup to do. I have things like that war that I don't know who it applies, at war that I don't know who it applies to. I got to make sure I got stuff where it belongs, deal out the cards and all that. And then we'll jump in and see what the fuck happens. I have the feeling this is going to frustrate me as much as Virgin Queen did. But maybe more, maybe less. I don't know. We shall see. We shall see. It's a pity that I have that feeling, and if it persists, because, as somebody pointed out, this is a period I am intensely interested in, right? And it's got this zooming in on Spain that I really, really love. However, it feels so scripted that I'm kind of depressed by that. Like, it feels like the Beltranejos can't win. You know, I feel like I should be playing, the computer games, which are not which really weird things can happen in, basically. But I like my board games better, supposedly. Plus, despite all the problems I have with them, I found Crusader Kings just couldn't play. Maybe if I get an SSD in there or whatever, it'll work. But man, that was just, it was depressing because I was having a fun little time, not doing all that well, but having a good time. I really enjoyed Crusader Kings, the original Crusader Kings, but I found that I was able to manipulate the royal marriages too much in it, which was part of what I enjoyed. Like, I was able to create an empire that put, Charles V's inheritance to shame and hold on to it. You have to remember, Charles V, immediately after he died, he abdicated the imperial holding him and became king of Spain. But, the Habsburgs were split at that point. And that's one of the things that's hard to arrange in Crusader Kings, is that trying to hold together a realm is really, really tough because of the succession rules and all that. And then all the other effects. It's really hard to build up a real dynasty of any size. But in the original Crusader Kings, there were ways of getting around it and creating yourself and making yourself basically invulnerable. And bad boy points didn't matter anymore because anybody who declared war on you, you were so fucking huge, you could just steamroll them and take them over, and you end up with more out of it. I really didn't like the way bad boy points were implemented in the early games. I don't know if they've gotten better because I haven't been able to be powerful enough in any of them to really take a major hand in that. Anyway, that's another one of them tangents. Let's send this up, and maybe we start playing today. Maybe tomorrow for Christmas. I don't know.